Thick Boy Nation. Thick Boy Squad. Thick Boy Nation.
Waiting is not an end. Waiting is a means to push myself to do more, to be more, to bring about that which I want more than anything. The coming of Mashiach in here.
Thick Boy Squad.
Sorry, man. That's the only racers I know, but it makes sense. They were racers, they were wild. I think. I don't
Yo,
know.
dog.
We scripted the bag, we culturally
Alright,
appropriate.
everyone.
Watch out, fan. You know what I mean?
Is this bitch still talking?
But Mexicans actually do.
Worse.
Racer better than white
Stream.
The
Ever.
do you know how they did it?
Thick Boy Squad.
Alright, so it's like good morning. Let us begin by thanking all of our sponsors for this morning. Sure to thank our annual
Let's move.
Talmud sponsor for Tafshin Pehei, the Tosim Mishpacha, for dedicating all of the Sherman Joshua's this year as his host for the Soros Levels for Am Yisrael. Talmud sponsors for the month of Adar, Terry and Steve Lavin, Terry's father, Dr. Harry Khan, Zvi Hirsch, Ben Yosef Cohen, the Ziv Levin and Berman families in memory of William Ziv Zev Shmuel Ben Yisrael, and our week of learning sponsors Nathan and Beth Adler in memory of Judy Goldman, Yehudis Esther Bas Alozar, Zichron Lebrach, we hope that the merit of our Talmud Torah, all of the Neshama Slav and Aliyah, families in Nechama, all those in the Refuah Shav and Kedot, Kol Cholei Yisrael, this Baruch Shemir Tasha bring home all of our hostages and our holy soldiers should be successful to Chol Masi. So with that, let us begin. We have a lot to do today, Baruch Hashem. Good. Okay, today's daf is Tzadik Zayin, 97. We are taking off on Tzadik Vav on the base, second line down in the wide line. So let's remember again, we left off on the cliffhanger yesterday of Sancheriv, the Vutzaran, after killing almost 1 million people, having this desire to convert, recognizing again the enormity of his actions, and ready to go in and join the ranks of Klal Yisrael. Gemara now picks up on that theme. Where it says, Naaman, Ger Toshav Hayah. So Naaman, Rabbi said, who was the general of Aram, also responsible for spilling much Jewish blood. So Naaman became a Ger Toshav. And we'll say, Ger Toshav usually means a non-Jew who repudiates idolatry, accepts Shem and lives in Eretz Yisrael. That's the general definition of a Ger Toshav. So Naaman became a Ger Toshav. The Vutzaran, Ger Tzedek. Now it's interesting. So the Gemara seems to indicate over here that the Vutzaran really became Ger Tzedek means again. He converted. Mibnei Banav Shal Sisra, Lamdu Tar Yerushalayim. Sisra's grandson. Remember again, Sisra, the general who went against the Jewish people, defeated by Barak and Yael. In Sisra, we read the Atar Shana that Yavid in Sisra, his mother's cries serve as the basis for a lot of what we do in Kiyah Shofar. So Bnei Banav Shal Sisra Lamdu Tar Yerushalayim. The grandsons of Sisra learned Torah in Yerushalayim. Bnei Banav Shal Sancheriv Limdu Torah Berabim. The grandsons of Sancheriv taught Torah in public. Umani, who were these grandsons of Sisra who taught Torah in public? Shmaya and Avtalion. That's wild. Remember Shmaya and Avtalion, they were the Rebbeim of Hillel and Shammai. So Shmaya and Avtalion, the Rebbeim of Hillel and Shammai themselves were descendants, or grandsons of Sancheriv. Mibnei Banav Shel Haman, Lamdu Torah Mibnei Brak. Haman's grandsons learned Torah in Bnei Brak. Va'af Mibnei Banav Shel Osa Rasha, Bikesh HaKadosh Baruch Hu, Lachnisam Tachas Hashemah. Even the grandsons of Nebuchadnezzar were going to become Jewish. So what happened? Abu Malach Hashem HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Malach said to HaKadosh Baruch Hu, Ribono Shel Olam, Mish Hechrev Esecha, Yisarf Esechalecha, Tachnis Tachas Kanti Hashemah. So the Malachim said, HaKadosh Baruch Hu, no. What's going on over here? Could it be that someone who destroyed the Beis HaMikdash, someone who destroyed your city, someone who did so many terrible things to your children, such a person like this should merit to have his family come underneath the wings of the Shekhinah? Kind of this is what's interesting. Seems to be that the Malachim convinced HaKadosh Baruch Hu not to allow Nebuchadnezzar or Nebuchadnezzar's descendants from joining the ranks of Klal Yisrael. Hainu Dechsid, Rafinu as Bavel v'lo nifrasa. We tried to heal Bavel, but it cannot be healed. So we'll say this idea that Bavel could have been healed technically by the conversion of Nebuchadnezzar's children. But Bavel was so broken. Bavel was such a state of disrepair. Bavel did so much to us that they were beyond repair. Incredible. Ula says that refers to something else. I'm sorry. Ula Amar is Nebuchadnezzar. This refers to Nebuchadnezzar. That there was no going back to Nebuchadnezzar. No chill for Nebuchadnezzar. No cathartic change for him. Rabbi Shmuel Bar Nachmani Amar Elu Naros Bavel. The Tirgama Ditzinaisa de Bavloi. Some say that it refers to the rivers of Bavel. Rashi says over here, it's the last Rashi, second last Rashi on the right hand side. Ilunaros Bavel, Shem Ra'im Lishtos. The waters are very bitter, and there's no way to sweeten those waters. The Gemara says, Ditzinaisa de Bavloi. Rashi says, the Kalim Marimheim Sha'omdin Benaros. Ultimately, again, they have bitter date palms. Not only are the waters bitter, but ultimately, again, the date palms that grow by the water are also bitter. And I will say, it's interesting, by the way, that the Gemara says that the one thing you can't heal is Naros Bavel. Reminiscent of the capital of Tilim, Al Naros Bavel, Sham Bachinu. Zachinu as seal. The Naros Bavel, that image, is remembering when Klal Yisrael is being led out from Eretz Yisrael, the destruction of Beis Hamikdash. We sat by the rivers of Bavel and we cried and we remembered. It's almost as if the Baruch Shalom says, there are some things in this world that are unforgivable. There are some things or some people or some things that are unredeemable. As crazy as that sounds, because we believe that everything is redeemable, everything is changeable. No, there's some evil that's perpetrated in this world that simply cannot be undone. What Nebuchadnezzar did to our people, simply beyond redemption, cannot be changed, cannot be uplifted, cannot be redeemed. Incredible. So the Gemara says as follows. So we'll say, but I'll just point out, a lot of the Chavra asked yesterday's daf. So clearly what's interesting is, Nebuchadnezzar, his offspring, there's no indication that Nebuchadnezzar ever wanted to convert, right? He had no desire. But his descendants wanted to, they were blocked. Yet Nebuchadnezzar did go ahead and convert. So it's interesting, what exactly does that mean, and who converted? So there's a sefer called Chukas Hager. In it, he has like a lot of discussions about Geirus and a lot of interesting pieces. He brings down a Shiloh where after the war there was a particular Nazi guard who wanted to convert, and again he obviously had tremendous charata for what it is that he did. And he came before I forgot the author of the sefer, his name, and to convert. And it was a Shiloh. And there were people who were there who said, how do you convert this guy? We know what he did. We saw what he did. We experienced the cruelty at his hands. And the Mechaber, because like I said, the Russian says is based on halacha yevesha. Right? It's an interesting expression. Halacha yevesha, like cold hard fact, cold hard halacha, you should be able to convert. The halacha is if somebody becomes a Baal Tshuva, right, and they mamish repent for their past, they should be able to convert. But he says, but how can you convert such a person like this? How could a person like this be welcomed into Am Yisrael after everything that he did? How could it be? How could it be that a person would have behaved in such an egregious fashion with such cruelty towards Am Yisrael, and then we would welcome him into our ranks? So he paskin, don't convert him. Don't convert him. But what's interesting is you don't often find this in halacha. It was much more an emotional psak than it was a legal psak. Because the legal psak is you can convert. If the guy's sincere and he mamish has charot, you can convert him. But emotionally, how could such a person like that be welcomed into Israel? So it's interesting, by the way, where it says that Nebuchadnezzar became a ger, right? Who converted him, which Beis Din took responsibility for this. It is interesting to note that the lashon by Nebuchadnezzar is Araf. He ran away, which seems to indicate that he just went off somewhere else, not part of community, not part of regular Jewish people. He went off. What does it mean that he converted? Does it mean that he went through a formal process? Does it mean that he just accepted upon himself to be close to HaKadosh? We don't know. It's just interesting to point out. Okay, what is weiter? Amar Ula says as follows: Amar Moav, Shema v'Bisha v'Yerushalayim. Amar Moav, we're bad neighbors to Yerushalayim. How so? Kivan v'Shamin will become Navi l'Chorba Yerushalayim. When Amar Moav heard that the Navi was prophesying about the destruction of Yerushalayim, Shalchu. Nebuchadnezzar. They sent word to Nebuchadnezzar. In other words, what is pointing out over here is what prompted Nebuchadnezzar to go ahead and attack Yerushalayim, especially after seeing what happened to Sancheiriv, what prompted him to do it. So the Gemara says, Ammon Amoth, currently not be prophesizing that Yerushalayim is going to be destroyed. So they sent to Nebuchadnezzar, Puk V'tah, time for you to come. Nebuchadnezzar, Chal Yisrael is weak, Chal Yisrael is going to be destroyed. Puk V'tah, come and, literally again, look and come. Amar, Mistafina V'lo La'abrudi K'dibai B'kanai. So again, Nebuchadnezzar said, I'm afraid that they're going to do to me what they did to their previous enemies, meaning again, he's referring to Sancheiriv. Shal Chulei Ke'ein Ha'ish B'leisa. The Ish is not home. Ve'ein Haderech Me'rachok. So sorry, Haloch Ni'derech Rachok. So the Gemara said, Ve'ein Ish, who's the Ish? Ela Kodesh Baruch Hu. So the Ish means that he said the man is not home, which means Kodesh Baruch Hu has left his home. Shneimar Hashem Ish Milchama. So ultimately, again, they tell Nebuchadnezzar, this is the right time. Kodesh Baruch Hu has abandoned Klal Yisrael. You should come and fight. Shalchulu. So he says, well, maybe HaKadosh Baruch Hu is close by. In other words, maybe they won't show as much as it looks like he's left Klal Yisrael now. When they're in a state of need, he will return. No, God has really abandoned him. God is really far away. Well, Klal Yisrael has tzaddikim, and tzaddikim have the koach hatfilah, and when they daven, they bring HaKadosh Baruch Hu back. Shalchu le'tzur ha'kesef lakach b'yado ve'kesef al tzaddikim. The Ish has taken his bundle of money with him, and what's the bundle of money? Because of his tzaddikim. Shneimar ve'echra li b'chamisha ha'kesef v'chomer s'orim v'lesach s'orim. Shalchu lehu hadri rishi b'tshuva u'bayimach rachami u'maisilei. Well, said his conversation is absolutely incredible. So the Nebuchadnezzar says, okay, well, even if the Ish is gone right now, and the tzaddikim are gone right now, what's going to happen? So the Rishayim will do tshuva. So the Rishayim will do tshuva, and they'll ultimately again bring HaKadosh Baruch Hu back to the Beis HaMikdash. So the Gemara says, Shalkolei kvar kavalahem zman. No, so essentially, Ammon Amoth said it's too late. HaKadosh Baruch Hu already decreed, and not only that, he even set a time for the destruction of the Beis Hamikdash. L'yom ha'kesa yavo l'beiso. Ein kesa elazman shneimar ba'kesa l'yom chagim l'sham. So Shalchulu, so Nebuchadnezzar said, Sisvo, v'lo matzina da'asim mitigla omi mitra. It's winter time already, fall, winter. And I can't come because of the rain. So mostly, by the way, but you clearly see from something fascinating, which is Nebuchadnezzar doesn't want to come. He doesn't want to come. In other words, he has just a bad feeling about this, that even if somehow he's successful, the repercussions and ramifications will be overwhelming. So I don't want to come. The weather is very bad. They said to him, don't worry about it. When you come to Eretz Yisrael, so navigate yourself around the mountains. In other words, go ahead and travel by the base of the mountains. That way the mountains will shield you from the rain and the snow. Shneimar, Shalchu kar moshel eres misalam midbara har Tzion el har basion. Shalach lehu, yasina lesli duchta diasivna bay. Nebuchadnezzar says, if I come, there's no place for me to stay. There's no place for me to house my army. So Mary says, don't worry about it. They sent back to him. Shalchulei, kibros shalahem, murim nipaltim shalchach. The graves of the Jews are even nicer than your palaces. So Nebuchadnezzar said, Va'esehinu Umar Hashem Yotzias Asmos Malchi Yehuda, Ves Asmos Sarab, Ves Asmos HaKohanim, Ves Asmos HaNaviim, Ves Asmos Yerushalayim Kivrayim, V'shat Chum L'Shamayim V'Yarech V'chotz L'Shamayim Sha'avam, V'Asher Abdom Asher Alchu Achalehim. Amar Lei Ranach Nudar Yitzchak. V'Yishmi L'Chak, so once I saw again. So that's the end of the story. So it's just interesting to note over here. First of all, I will say just in general, it's not a new thing that there's animosity from our neighbors towards us, right? Like, what do Ammon and Moab have to get involved in this? Those are our cousins. And why do they have to get involved? Ammon and Moab come, and they incite Nebuchadnezzar ultimately again to march against Yerushalayim. Incredible. I will say now, we want to switch this back to the topic of Mashiach. So remember again, up until now, the focus really was on Yemos Mashiach. Now the Gemara is going to focus a little bit more on Mashiach himself. Some really beautiful Gemaras ahead of us. I'm going to have Nachman of Yitzchak. This is incredible. Have you heard anything? Amos Asi Bar Nafli. When is Bar Nafli coming? Now, who Bar Nafli is? Also interesting. When is he coming? So the Gemara, Amalei Man Bar Nafli. Who's Bar Nafli? Amalei Mashiach. Bar Nafli is Mashiach. So the Gemara says Mashiach Bar Nafli. Currently, Mashiach is called Bar Nafli. Amalei In. Yes, he is. Tichsev Bayomahu. Akim. I will say top of Tzadik Zayin 97a. Akim Esukas David Hanofalas. Let's say it's incredible. What's the Messianic era? I will lift up, literally again, I will rebuild Sukkot David Hanofalas, the fallen Sukkah of David Hamelech, a reference to the Beis Hamikdash. Rashi says over here, Sukkot David Hanofalas, Malchus Beis David, Lahachi Kari Mashiach Barnafi. So what's interesting? Rashi understands over here, Sukkot David Hanofalas is not the Beis Hamikdash. Rather, Sukkot David Hanofalas is Davidic monarchy. So one of the things that Mashiach will do, ultimately, again, is the restoration of Davidic monarchy. That's why Mashiach is called Bar Nafli, the one who lifts up fallen things. Let's say there's something so beautiful. You think to yourself, out of all the things that Mashiach is going to do, right? Go Gum Bago, Tchias HaMesim, all this other stuff. Right? The one thing that he's known is he restores the Davidic monarchy. Or by the way, also others understand that Sukkot David Hanofalas reference the Beis Hamikdash. Right? So that's what he liked. So he says sometimes the greatest avodah in life is to rebuild things that were broken. To take something from new and rebuild it, that's one thing. But to take something that was whole and then broke it and then rebuild it again, rebuild it to put back pieces into what they once were, is sometimes the greatest avodah. So what does Mashiach do? Everything that he has, he's able to take to pieces. Halachically, he's able to take a monarchy that was destroyed and rebuild it. Take a structure that was destroyed and rebuild it. That's Mashiach, Bar Nafli. Incredible, Bar Nafli. Which I will say, Rabbi tells us also within ourselves, what's the greatest accomplishment of the self? To become about Tshuva. What does it mean to become about Tshuva? It means to take all of your broken pieces and to mend them and make them whole. If you could put yourself back together, if you could become your own Bar Nafli, take the pieces of you that are broken, take the pieces of you that are fallen, and put them back together, that is the greatest accomplishment. The Gemara goes like, I'm going to help you, Darsh will say something incredible Gemara over here. Darsh ben David Bat, Hamidi Chachamim Musatim. So we'll say, we're going to see over here that there's a couple of different narratives, well, we're only two different narratives, about the generation and the time that immediately precedes Mashiach. Like, what ushers in Messianic era. So watch this. The Gemara says as follows. So Rabbi Yochanan says as follows. The generation that David HaMelech will, that the Mashiach will come. There's a diminution, less Torah. There's less Torah to be found. There are fewer Talmidei Chachamim. So there's fewer Talmidei Chachamim, and in general, a lot of suffering. Yitzaros Rabos, terrible suffering. Ubiziros Koshos, Mischashos. And new terrible decrees every single day. Terabanan, Shavua Shaben David Bat, the year, or Shavua usually means like the 7-year cycle in which Mashiach comes. Shana Rishonim is Kayim Mikrazeh. So we'll say, now this is the 7-year period before Mashiach comes. In that 7-year period, the following will occur. In year number 1, Shana Rishona is Kayim Mikrazeh. Imtarti al Ir Achos, Ba'al Ir Achas Lo Antir. Some cities will have food. Other cities won't have food. Literally, again, I'll make it rain in one city, won't rain in a different city. Shnia, second year, famine everywhere. So in year number 1, some places have rain, some places don't have rain. Year number 2, everyone has famine. Year number 3, Shlishis Ra'av Gadol U'Meisim Anashim Nashim Etaf V'Chasidim V'Anshei Ma'isa. In year number 3, there'll be a great famine. Men, women, children die. Hasidim, Anshe Maisa, great people will die. The Torah, Mishtachachas Milam Bel. Torah will virtually be forgotten. Overwhelming. So material suffering, spiritual suffering. Revius in the 4th year, some of it in a Sova. Some places have food, some places don't have food. Zechamishis in the 5th year, Sova Gadol. There'll be a great satiety, more food. Ba'ochlim v'shosin u'simechim. People will eat, drink, be happy. The Torah goes down. Torah wants them to come back. So maybe Chachamim, V'shishis kolos, In the 6th year, there'll be sounds. Rashi says over here, B'shishis kolos, Yotzu kolos sheben David ba. So there'll be murmurings, right? The people will be talking. Mashiach is close. B'shiviyas mechalos, in the 7th year war, which could mean Gog u'Magog, the Masei Shiviyas ben David ba. And the Masei Shiviyas, right, at the end of that 7th year, meaning year number 8, that's when Mashiach comes. So this is a description, right? This is a description of the 7-year cycle which precedes Messianic redemption. Rabbi Yosef. Rabbi Yosef says, 1 second, how much Shviyas the Havakim Asa? Rabbi Yosef says, by the way, what you just described over here, that 7-year cycle, that's pretty much every 7-year cycle comes. So, like in other words, what you just described is Jewish history. And I don't understand that Mashiach has not come. So Rabbi says, B'shishis kolos, B'shviyas mechamas mi haba. So Rabbi says, really? Was there ever a year 6? But ultimately, again, they were murmurings about Mashiach. And in year 7 of wars, did that order ever happen? But Kisidra min habi. Furthermore, again, what Rabbi responds is, it's not just that these events occur over a 7-year cycle, it's that these events occur in this order over a 7-year cycle. So has that ever happened the way he was described? The answer to that is, from the Gemara's perspective, is no. Tanya, Yehuda says, Tarship and David ba, Beis Havad, Yel is Nus. So we'll say, what you see over here is something really amazing. What you begin to see is that apparently before Mashiach comes, there is a general spiritual decline. Now, I'll just put this out. We'll see this more closely later. But there's like these 2 models about Messianic redemption. Because Mashiach comes essentially almost like when things hit rock bottom, and therefore there's no choice but to redeem us. Or is redemption something we can earn, right? And we can even expedite. So just hold on to that. We'll see this framed as we go on in the coming days. And we don't read this as Torshav and David, the generation in which Mashiach comes. Beis Havad Yel is Nus. I will say Beis Havad is the Beis HaMedrash. The Beis HaMedrash will be turned into a place for immorality. Now listen, what's the pshat? Because there will be no Talmidei Chachamim. Therefore, no one congregates there. When you have large empty spaces, and Batei Medrash Rashi points out, we're generally like outside of the city. So when you have large spaces, unoccupied, a little bit removed from public eye, what are they used for? Used immorality. So they'll once again painting a picture of a lack of Torah. The Hagadol Yechrav, the north will be destroyed. The Hagavlon Yesham, and ultimately again Rashi says over here. Rashi says, Vagavla Yesha also means other there's a place will be destroyed. The people who live in the border cities, because there'll be a lack of general security, will wander from place to place. Below Yechoninu, the Chachmas, and they won't find any mercy. Below Chachmas, Asof, and Tisrach, the wisdom of the Talmidei Chachamim will become putrid, in other words, will decay. The Yirei Chet Yim Asum, people who fear sin will be despised. In other words, we'll say, not only will Torah be forgotten, but those who try to be pious will be looked down upon. Upnei hadar kipnei kelev. Literally, again, to face the generation of that, the face of a dog. Interesting, again, like we saw in Baladan, in yesterday's daf. I would say so again, which means that there'll just be a general sense of spiritual decay. Va'emes ne'ederes, MS will not be found. Shene'emar v'ati emes ne'ederes, Sarah mishtalel. So the Gemara says, "My v'ati emes ne'ederes, Amid Birav, Melamed shenasis adarim v'holech esla." So literally, again, MS will become like a group that will wander around, right? And those who seek MS will ultimately, again, become wanderers as well. My v'sar meira mishtolel, Amid Bereshila, chomisha samira mishtalel al habrios. Ultimately, again, anyone who tries to be samira, anyone who tries to be the right thing will be ostracized. Rashi says here, Mishtala ala brios, kala olom omer alav sholtehu, and Mishtala. So we'll say, so there'll be an absence of Torah, and even those who try to go ahead and do the right thing will essentially be ostracized from the community. Such a sense of spiritual decline in the greater Klal Yisrael. Amar Rabbi said as follows. This is Rabbi Mereish Havamina, Leka Kushta Va'alma. So we'll say this is a tremendous statement, right? Rabbi says, in the beginning, I thought to myself, there is no truth in this world. Just there's an overwhelming statement. Rashi says, like a kushta ba'alma, ein adam ba'olam sheyidaber emes tamid. Let's listen to this statement. There is no person who always speaks the truth. Like Rabbi is saying, you can't find a person in this world who always speaks the truth. Rabbi is saying, I want to point out, by the way, that statement is not even a condemnation. It could just be like a reality. Remember again, we have instances in halacha where you're allowed to go ahead and change the truth, right? Like the Gemara says, you're allowed to go ahead and sometimes change the truth for the sake of preserving greater peace. So there's a license for that, right? There's an ability for that. So Rabbi says, I don't think there's a person in this world who always tells the truth. So again, someone told me, this Rav Tavus said, he went on record, he said, if they would give me all the money in the world, I would not lie. I would not change any truth. So let's listen to this story. So we'll say now this Rav Tavumi tells a story about himself. This is one time I went to a place. The Kushta, this is great. The name of the place was Kushta. The name of the town was Truth. That was the name. The Gemara says, "V'lo hava mishane b'diburayu, v'lo hava misinchim hasam below zmanei." So I say, in this place called Truth, what was the residency requirement? Residency requirement was you cannot lie. You always have to tell the truth. And interestingly enough, no one ever died before their time. I was thinking, what does that mean? No one died before their time. Apparently, no one died young. No one died young. People live to right old age is there, and they died like that. So what happens? Rabbi Tavuni said, I came to this place, I liked it a lot. I decided to settle down. And the CV is something. I married a woman from Kushta. Now watch this. So the Gemara says, I married her from there. We had 2 sons. So it was one day, my wife was washing her hair. This is Rabbi Tavuni saying, my wife was washing her hair. Asai shifta tarfa adasha. So the neighbor came along, right? Her friend came along, knocked on the door and asked me, is your wife home? Now Rav Tavumi felt, Lav orach ara, amar lo la sahacha. Rav Tavumi felt it wasn't sneeze to say my wife is washing her hair, right? And she's taking a bath. It wasn't right. So instead what he said is, no, I'm sorry, she's not home. She's not home. So I said, so what happened? Shchivulei tartin benin. My 2 sons passed away. 2 sons passed away. So the townspeople came over there and said, what is this? Or this doesn't happen in our town. Why did your sons pass away? So I told them this is what happened. So Rav Tavuni realized what ended up happening over here is he lied. Now granted, he lied for good reason because he was protecting the dignity of his wife. He felt he was Amrulay. So they said to him, they asked him, if you don't mind, please leave our town. Please leave our town and do not bring death to our townspeople. What's an overwhelming story? So again, now this goes in line with what Rabbi was saying, that you can't really find a person in this world who always tells the truth. That is a true statement. You can't always find a person in this world. Because even if you have a town like Kushta, right? What was the population of Kushta? 4? You know, how many people are living there, right? So that's fine. You can maybe create like a pocket like that. But at the end of the day, that's not the normal way that people live. Because I want to say sometimes life does require us to go ahead and bend the truth a little bit for certain circumstances. Incredible. Tanya, Rabbi Norai Omer. David, Dorsha ben David Ba. So we'll say once again, a description of the Messianic generation. The generation of Mashiach comes in. So the Gemara says, Na'arim yalbinu pnei zakenim. The young will embarrass the old. Uzakenim ya'amdu lifnei na'arim. And the elders will be forced to give respect to the young ones. So I want to say, there's going to be like this sense of like generational, like impunity, like a sense of generational disrespect. So the young will disrespect the old. The old will be forced to respect the young. Ubas kan be a daughter will rebel against her mother. A daughter-in-law against her mother-in-law. The face of the generation will be like the face of a dog. And ultimately, again, the son will not be embarrassed in front of his father. I will say, by the way, I just want to point out, remember this Gemara? Ben Sorer Umora, that's even the Ben Sorer Umora. He steals the money from his father, but where does he eat the meat and wine? Where does he eat it? In someone else's rishos. Why? Because there's an inherent embarrassment that a son has in the presence of his father that he's not going to transgress. In the generation of Mashiach, there's going to be such a lack of decency that a son doesn't even have any embarrassment from his father. Let's say first five line Tanya. Rabbi Nechemia says, Dorsha ben David ba ha'azus tirbech. Azus means, I don't know what the good English word for Azus is, brazenness, right? Brazenness will proliferate. Vayoker ya'aves. Gaiva, Rashi says, Shal yichadu zeh yakar kavod. So there'll be such arrogance that no one will give honor one to the other. V'hageven yitin perio. The vine will produce many grapes. V'hayayin biyoker. But wine will be very expensive. Everybody say, what does that mean? The vine will produce a lot of grapes, but the wine will still be very expensive. So what Rashi points out to me, what that means is there's going to be a lot of wine consumption. In other words, it's an indulgent, hedonistic society. Even though there's plenty of supply, there's also plenty of demand. And therefore the prices keep going up. The entire monarchy will turn to heresy. And no one could rebuke anyone. It's fascinating to see like a lot of these elements, right? In other words, everyone is right, everyone's opinion is right, everyone's feeling is right, and even if they're wrong, no one could say anything to the other. Rabbi Yitzchak, in Ben David ba, so Ben David, right, Mashiach doesn't come literally again until the entire market, the entire government turns to heresy. Amar Rabbi says, what's the pasuk? Kulo hapach lavan taharu. So it's interesting. It's a little bit of a play on saras. What happens with saras? If the entire body turns white, they don't look like again, it's tahar. So when there is this unfortunate, comprehensive change in society, that society as a whole turns heretical, that society as a whole just loses it, interestingly enough, that's actually a sign that redemption is on the way. Fascinating. Rabbanon. Ki yadin Hashem amo, ki yira Hashem, ki yireya, ki azlos yad va'afes atzor va'azov, ein bein David ba, so sorry, Mashiach only comes at sheyirbu hamusaros. Until there is a proliferation, ultimately, again, we'll say, of the musaros. Now, again, we'll see exactly what that means in just a moment. Until, again, there is a diminution, ultimately, again, of Tamidim. Rashi says over here, so there's no Talmidei Chachamim, but there's no Talmidei Chachamim. Ultimately, again, there's no one to restore Klal Yisrael to the right path. There are Moseres, people who give over the Jews to the government. So you have all of this together, and once again, you paint the picture of a society that is highly spiritually deficient. Until there is poverty. This is interesting. Mashiach only comes when Klal Yisrael despairs of ever being redeemed. Isn't that incredible? Only once we give up hope on redemption does redemption come. Shneimar ve'efes atzor ba'azur kiviyachol in somech v'azur l'Yisrael. K'yad Rabbi Zera, goes in his fashion, it's fascinating. K'yad Rabbi Zera, k'yava mashkich rabbanan dema'askivei. So we're going to talk about this more on the days. When Rabbi Zera would find groups of rabbanim trying to figure out the date of messianic arrival. This is meaning on the days. A lot of rabbanim spending a lot of time, when is Mashiach coming? When is it happening? Whenever Rabbi Zera would find people trying to figure out Mashiach is coming, he said, please do not delay the arrival of Mashiach. By trying to figure out when Mashiach is coming, ultimately, again, you're delaying his arrival. Isn't this fascinating? Why? Isn't this was this is incredible Gemara. There are three things that come when you stop looking for them. The Bible says incredible Gemara. What are the three things? Number one, Elohim, Mashiach, Metzia, Va'akrav. Three things happen when you're not looking for them. Mashiach, finding a lost object, and a scorpion. So let's work backwards, right? Scorpions, apparently, again, the way scorpions work, Rashi points out, is that they sneak up on you out of nowhere, and they sting you. Okay, Mitzia, so that we know this, right? In other words, if you go out looking for just somebody's lost object, you're not going to find anything. But somehow, if you just find your business doing your thing, you stumble across stuff. And the last is Mashiach. If you don't look for him, he comes. In other words, if you start trying to figure out when he's going to come, Then I will say, what's the pshat with this? And this is so profound. The Gemara saying is like this. Instead of trying to figure out when Mashiach is coming, live the kind of life that will make you come. In other words, sometimes the Gemara is saying, we spend so much time trying to figure out when future events are going to occur instead of recognizing that if we just make ourselves better, then the things we want out of life will naturally occur. And you think about it, just you don't even have Mashiach, right? I spend so much time trying to figure out, when is my marriage going to improve? When is my parnasa going to improve? When are my kids? When am I this? When am I this? All the things going to improve. Well, instead of worrying about when it's going to turn around, there's something better. Do something to turn it around. Change yourself. Change your life. Work harder. Put in more effort, right? We spend so much time, when? Let's just worry about when. Just worry about what can you do right now to improve the status quo of your life. What can you do right now to bring about the brachos that you so badly want out of life? Stop waiting and start doing. Incredible Gemara. Rav Katina. So now, interesting. Now that we just spoke about, by the way, not trying to figure out when Mashiach is going to come, the Gemara is going to go into an exhaustive discussion about what Mashiach is going to come. All right. So again, what's that? Because there's two different schools of thought. That's what I'm saying. Just like what brings about messianic redemption, right? Again, is it terrible stuff? Is it good stuff? It's two schools of thought. Contemplating or trying to figure out when Mashiach is going to come, also two schools of thought. So we go, the world is 6,000 years old. So everybody knows, respectively where we all speak on this. The world was programmed to operate for 6,000 years. That's the way of the world. How are those 6,000 years? How are they? And then 1,000 years of destruction. In other words, we'll say, so apparently the way that the world is structured to work is, the world as we know it will exist for 6,000 years. After that, again, there's like a reboot. 1,000 years of desolation. Remember again, you had the Gemara, that what happens to the tzaddikim during those 1,000 years? Remember again, what happened? They're given wings and they fly over the water. The tzaddikim were brought back by Tches Anisim. They don't die during that time. They hover for 1,000 years, and then after that 1,000 years, another world. Another world is created. So the Gemara says, Shneimar, v'niskav Hashem levado bayomahu. Abaye Amar, Shrei Charu. Rabbi says, the world exists for 6,000 years. And then for 2,000 years there's destruction. Shneimar yichayenu miyomayim. The Rabbi that supports Rav Katina. The Gemara says, Kishim Shashvius. Just like Shemitah, right? Ultimately, again, there's a Shemitah here once every 7 years. So to the world, so to speak, undergoes a Shemitah once every 7,000 years. In other words, the world exists for 6,000 years, and in the year and the 7,000th year, ultimately, is like the Shemitah, universal Shemitah, where everything is reset. So it's interesting, by the way, that we often think that passage that Hashem will be established by himself. It's more a reference to the Messianic era. The Gemara understands over here, know that the Levado refers after the 6,000 years of this world, and everything is reset. There'll only be HaKadosh Baruch Hu in the universe for that 1,000-year period. V'omer, Mizmor Shir Yom HaShabbos, L'Yom Shekul Shabbos. Incredible. What's the Yom Shekul Shabbos? Apparently, again, that 1,000 years that follows the 6,000 years of this world. Incredible. V'omer, Ki el Hashem beinecha k'yom esmo, Ki ya'avar Tan ve'elio, Sheishes alafim shana havi alma. The world will exist for 6,000 years. The Gemara says, Havi alma, Shnei alpayim tovavo. So now, how are those 6,000 years broken up? For the first 6,000 years, for the first 2,000 years of the world, most of this is retrospective now, right? The world that we're in. For the first 2,000 years, there was tovavo. Now, what is in this tovavo? That Torah wasn't given. Right? For the first 2,000 years, the Torah was not given in the world. Okay, Shnei alpayim, Shnei alafim Torah. So ultimately, the next 2,000 years are the years of Torah. Ushnei alafim Yemos Mashiach. And the last 2,000 of the 6,000 are Yemos Mashiach. You might say now, again, we see this, we're like, that's us. That would put us, right? That would put us. We're in the last 2,000, and there's no Mashiach yet. Sadi Zayin of 97, Obavalo Sherabu, Yatso Mehem Mashiach. We'll say this is a profound statement. But because we've messed up, because he messed up. Yatsu mehem mashi yatsu. When you say, when I don't do what's right in life, when I make poor decisions, do you know what happens? Yatsu mehem mashi yatsu. What comes out of your decisions is what comes out of your decisions. So many times in life we find ourselves in bad spots and we wonder, how did we get here? How did we get here? It's not that complicated how I got here. I made a series of poor decisions. Some of them acutely poor, some of them nuanced poor, and that's what got me where I got to. It's not rocket science. The good news is the same bad decisions that got me into the spot where I am, hopefully, if I change my decision-making processes, can get me out of it. Maybe not fully out of it, because often in life you can't reverse a lot of the damage that you've done. But at least hopefully I could choose wisely, I could choose differently going forward. So again, that's the way the world was supposed to work. 2,000 years without Torah, 2,000 years with Torah, and then 2,000 years, the last 2,000 of the 6,000 were supposed to be Moshe. That's what it was supposed to be. But because of our sinful behavior, Yatsu mehen mashi yatsu. Incredible. Amar lo Eliyahu Rabbi Yehuda, Achod Rav Salah Hasidah. This is incredible. This is Eliyahu Rabbi talking. That is Eliyahu Rabbi. And Rabbi says to Rabbi Yehuda, Eina olam hafos yishmonu bechamisha yovelos. The world will not exist for less than 85 yovel cycles. In the last yovel cycle, that's when Mashiach will come. Rabbi Yehuda says, does Mashiach come at the beginning or the end of that yovel cycle? Eliyahu says, I don't know. Does the yovel cycle finish or not? Eliyahu said, I don't know. It was said, by the way, this is so profound. Why is it so profound? Eliyahu is the one who announces the arrival of Mashiach. So we'll say, Eliyahu says, I don't know. In other words, there are certain things about this whole Geula that no one knows except the Ribono Shel Olam, which is why, by the Rabbi say, why we go back to the statement ultimately again of Rabbi Zera, that maybe our avoda is not to focus so much on when, but to focus so much more on what. When is Mashiach going to come? I don't know. So, and the truth is, here's the good news. I'm in good company. Who else doesn't know? Who else doesn't know? Eliyahu doesn't know either. So if Eliyahu doesn't know, I'm certainly not going to figure out. So if I can't figure out the when, then what I need to be hyper-focused on is the what. What do I need to do to bring about Geula? What do I need to do to bring about Mashiach? What do I need to do in my personal life to try to fix my personal mistakes and the mistakes of the Klal? It's incredible. So Mar goes right there. Shalach Lei. No. Rav Ashi says, so Rashi says over here, so what Eliyahu was trying to tell Yehuda was, listen, I don't know exactly when Mashiach is coming. One thing is clear. There's no point in waiting for him until that last Yovel. Once that last Yovel comes, then it's already here. Let's say again, what I want to point out is something amazing. These Gemaras reflect the mindset that there is a predetermined time for Mashiach. And that's it. What you do, what you don't, is a predetermined time. There's another school of thought that says there is no predetermined time. There may be a, what's the word? Like a defined ending. Mashiach must come by this date. But it doesn't necessarily preclude the possibility of advancing his arrival through our spiritually meritorious behavior. Remember, like the Shalach Lei, Rav Chanan bar Tachliba, Rav Yosef. So Rav Chanan bar Tachliba, Rav Yosef. Masasi Adonach, listen to this. Obiyado Megillah Achas Ksuva Ashuris Kolashon HaKodesh. Listen to this, crazy. So Rav Chanan bar Tachliba said like this, I found a guy. This guy had a scroll. The scroll was written in Ashuris, Kolashon HaKodesh. And it said, V'amarti lo, minayin lo zu. From where, right? So Amarti lo, zu minayin lo. Where do you have the scroll from? Amrali lechayolos shoromi niskarti. I traveled with the Roman soldiers. And I found this scroll amongst the pilfered treasures of Rome. Rome took this from Klal Yisrael. I found this in the treasures. Because of and I found this following message. So listen to this. The following was written in the scroll. After 4,000, right? After 4,291 years, Ha'olam Yiton, the world will cease to exist. Okay? Mehem, as the Gemara says, Mehem Milchamos Tanimim. Some of those years will be wars of great sea creatures. Mehem Milchamas Gog uMagog. Some of them will be Gog uMagog. Ushar Yimos HaMashiach. And the rest of the years of the world will be Yimos HaMashiach. HaKadosh Baruch Hu Mechadesh Es Olamo El La'achar Shivas Alpayim Shana. HaKadosh Baruch Hu only restarts the world after 7,000 years. Remember again, it seems to go with the motif of 6,000 active creation, 1,000 of Tov Avo, and then a restarting of the universe. After 5,000 years, so the Gemara says, Tanya Rabbi Nassan Omer Rabbi Nassan says, the following pasuk ultimately again literally pierces the world until the depth. What's the pasuk? Ki od chazon lamoed, yafach leketz v'lo yechazeh. Im yisimameh chakya lo, ki bo yobo lo ya'acher lo ya'acher. So I'll say so again. This is an incredible pasuk from Habakkuk. So I'll say, let's translate the pasuk and then we'll interpret it. Ki od chazon lamoed, there will be a vision for the future, for the appointed time. Yafach leketz v'lo yechazeh. The end will come, and you will not be deceived. Im yismameh chakya lo. If he's delayed, wait for him. Kibo yavo lo ya'acher. He will come, and he will not be delayed. Here we go. We'll say, Lo karabasenu she'edarshin ad idan ibni upalag ibni. It's not like the Rabbanon who say, that Mashiach will only come at a defined time. Rashi says over here, ad idan ibni upalag ibni. Idan ki idan hagalo shalasayim b'hanu dal me'as beis ibni. So we'll say, don't like the Rabbanon who say that somehow Messianic redemption is based on the calculation of previous galus. And that's like Rabbi Smaloi. Now, what did Rabbi Smaloi say? Rashi says over here, Shlish Galus Adam Kikan Galus. Because what is referring to over here is these other Rabbanon, right? The Rabbanon themselves and the Bismalai, they came up with defined amounts of time until Mashiach comes. The halacha doesn't follow any of them. V'lo Rabbi Akiva, Shahayadorish Od Achas Ma'ati. V'ani Marish Eshamayim V'Sa'aretz. So as I saw ultimately again, and it's not Rabbi Akiva either. Right, Rabbi Akiva also gives a calculation. Ella, Malchus Rishon, Shevim Shana, Malchus Shnia, Chamishim Ushtayim, Malchus Ben Koziva, Shtei Shanim Umechza. So let's say, so what is this? Rather, what's the proper calculation? Malchus Rishon, what this sounds like is, the first Beis HaMikdash was 70 years. Second Beis HaMikdash, Malchus Shnia, Chamishim Ushtayim, 52 years. And Malchus Ben Koziva, what we just learned about, is 2.5 years. So I say, what does that mean? So the Gemara seems to be saying is as follows. The Gemara seems to be saying that halacha l'maisa, we don't know when Mashiach's going to come. We have no idea when Mashiach's going to come. And what happens most of the time between now and Mashiach is filled with incredible tumultuous activity. But there are periods of tranquility. There are periods of calmness. So that's what he's saying over here. During the first Beis HaMikdash, ultimately again, there's 70 years. Well, that seems to refer to Galus itself. Second Beis HaMikdash, ultimately 52 years. And then there is the 2.5 year reign of Bar Kokhba. Now, the 2.5 year reign of Bar Kokhba was actually a relatively good time for Klal Yisrael, right? We were on top. So the idea is the world is filled with difficulties. The world is filled with turbulent times. There are periods of tranquility. What we believe is at some point in time, Mashiach is going to come. But do not lose yourself in the calculations of those who try to understand when it's going to come, because often those calculations are not correct. The Gemara goes weiter. What is the meaning of that phrase? Literally, again, the bones should break, or the bones should become swollen of those who try to calculate when Mashiach is going to come. As I say, there is an exercise in futility to try to figure out when Mashiach is going to come. Because what happens for those who go ahead and try to calculate when Mashiach is going to arrive? What happens? They calculate, they come up with a time, and then the Mashiach doesn't come. What do they say? What do they say? You see, he's not coming. It's dangerous to calculate the date of Messianic arrival. Ella, what says incredible? Ella, chakelo. What is our avodah by Mashiach? What's our avodah? Wait. That is our avodah to wait. Shneimar, im yismameach chakelo. Even if he's delayed, just wait. Shema Tamar, anu mechakim b'hu einu mechakem. Maybe you'll say ultimately again that we wait, but he doesn't wait. No, we're waiting. HaKadosh Baruch Hu is waiting. Everybody's waiting. So again, if we're waiting for Mashiach, and Mashiach is waiting to come, so why doesn't he just come? Who's holding me back? Midas Hadin. So I say ultimately again, Midas Hadin. In other words, that the attribute of strict justice says Klal Yisrael is not yet deserving of Mashiach. So the Gemara says, but if strict justice is preventing Mashiach from coming, then why are we waiting? Then obviously again, waiting is in futility, because we can't come, Mashiach's not going to let him go. The Gemara says, the Kabal Schar. Because ultimately, again, there is reward for waiting. Shneimar ashrei kol chelo. We're going to stop over today, but what does this mean that there's a reward? First of all, tremendous nechama. We're waiting for Mashiach. Mashiach is waiting to come. The Torah wants some Mashiach, but the mitzvah that then the strict attribute of divine justice says it's not yet time. So then why wait if we know that our waiting is not going to make a difference? Because there is a reward for waiting. What kind of arbasa? Because when you wait for something and you want it badly, it builds up that anticipatory excitement. And the greater the anticipatory excitement, the more I am ready to take decisive action to make things happen. Waiting is not an end. Waiting is a means to push myself to do more, to be more, to bring about that which I want more than anything. The coming of Mashiach in here at the Aminu. Okay, Mosai Shibaya. All right, say good morning. Good morning. Let us begin by thanking all of our sponsors for this morning. Share to thank our annual Talmud Torah sponsor for Tafshin Pei, the Kosi Mishpacha, for dedicating all the Shemar Drashos this year as a Zechus from the Soros Tavasa Alavan Yisrael. Talmud Torah sponsors for the month of Adar, Terry and Steve Zinn, in loving memory of Terry's father, Dr. Harry Khan, Tzvi Hirsch Ben Yosef Cohen, the Ziv Levin and Berman family's memory of Mr. William Ziv, Zev Shmuel Ben Yisrael Zechor Midrash. Our week of learning sponsors, Nate and Beth Adler, in memory of Judy Goldman, Yehudis Esther Bas Elazar Zechor Midrash, and our Dafyoni sponsors for today, Matt and Diane Marks, in memory of Matt's father, Charles Marks, Helman Ben Mordechai Zechor Midrash. We hope that the merit of our Talmud Torah, all of the Shabbos Slav and Aliyah, the families in the Chama, all those who are close Shalom Kill Kol Chol Yisrael. Hashem bring home all of our hostages, and our holy soldiers should be successful. B'chol Maaseh Yedeihem. Well, with that, let us begin, and a special welcome back. We're fortunate with David Schwartz. Baruch haba, Baruch haba. Mishpach Hashem continues to give you refuah. And Hashem, we missed you. We missed you, but it's great to have you back. I was going to say, with that, let us begin. We have a lot to do today, Baruch Hashem. Again, also, by the way, this is it until we get to the end, right? This is Baruch Hashem. This is beautiful, beautiful Gemara after Gemara. I got to capture, I got it to story, lesson, messages, everything rolled into one. We're going to have a little bit of halacha as well. So with that, let us begin. Today, Daf is Tzadik Vav 96. We are picking up in Eretz Hashem on the bottom of Tzadik K on the base 95B. And also, he's not here today, but we have to wish a mazel tov to our beloved Chaver. And our Dafyomi member, Rabbi Avron Elbaum, our Gabbai, our Dafyomi Pillar. I'm talking over here like London, like you would normally be sitting right over there. Who's marrying off his daughter today, Baruch Hashem, B'Shato, Mitzvah, so mazel tov to the Elbaum, Mishpacha. Incredible. Let's begin. So we are picking up on the bottom of today's episode, Tzadik Vav 96. We are picking up on Tzadik K base 95B. And we left off 4 lines up on the bottom. I'm Rabbi Avon. Rabbi Avon says as follows. Had the pasuk not said it, you couldn't have said it yourself. Babrinar, Bamelach Ashur Asarosh, Usar Raglayim, the Gamazot and Tispa. So what says the more very close to the passage. The passage says on that day, like Kiriachol, the Ribono Shalom will give a haircut. He'll cut the beard, he'll cut the hair of the king of Ashur. So what is this talking about? So the Gemara says, also Kuchabichol, the Igni Gavra Saba. So what says, remember again, Sancheriv is being defeated. We saw that story already. Right? Suffered a humiliating defeat, not even at the hands of Chizkiah. Remember again, he suffered a humiliating defeat at the hands of Baruch, which is this ridiculous event that wiped out his army overnight. He now has to go back home and face his constituents. So the Baruch appears to him as an old man. But like a Gavra Saba. Amalei, he also took up Malchus Mizrach. Malchus Mizrach Amayrav. The Aisinu Lebenai Bekatlasinu, my Amrit Lahu. So the old man, Baruch, like comes to Sancheriv. He says, Sancheriv, when you have to go back home and you have to talk to all of the kings. Remember again, Sancheriv raised a huge army. Those were armies from neighboring kingdoms as well. So you have to go back home and face all of those kings whose sons you convinced to come out and do battle with you. And now those sons are dead. What are you going to say to them? What are you going to say to them? So Sancheriv says, you know what? I'm afraid. I don't know. I too have that fear about what am I going to say. So Sancheriv says to the old man, what should I do? They want to say, of course, you know what's so interesting about this is, remember again, fascinating how things change. Sancheriv was this general in charge of everyone, confident. And now what happens? He's asking an old guy he just met, right? He has no idea who this person is. And he's asking this old man for advice, what should I do? Amalei. So ultimately, again, it's incredible. So the old man says to Sancheriv, listen to this, Amalei, Zil Vishani Nafshach. You should really change. Rashi says over so it's fascinating. So the old man says to Sancheriv, you know what you should do? You should change yourself, not that nobody recognizes you. They say when you go home, no one's going to bother you. All right, so how should I change? Go get a pair of scissors. I'll give you a haircut. We'll change your appearance. Like I will say, I just want to point out before we go on, what a profound Gemara, and this is the timing of this is incredible because it's almost Elul, and we really have to and how it is so important to be able to get into the mindset of change. So look what happens over here. So Sancheriv is in trouble. What does Sancheriv realize? Sancheriv realizes the way I'm living right now, right? What I'm doing is not the way I need to be focusing. I will say we all have those epiphanical moments, right? When I realize that what I'm doing this is not the way it should be. It's just not the way it should be. I know that I could be more. So Sancheriv has that epiphanical moment. And he says, right, so he goes to the old man says, you should change yourself. Change. You can change whatever you want about yourself, whatever you want. You should change. And let's see, what so often happens when it comes to change? Sancheriv says, what, that's a great idea. It's a great idea. And how should I change? Oh, take a haircut. Let's say, sometimes in life, we have these moments of clarity where I recognize that I need to change. And then instead of affecting real change, we affect cosmetic change. It's kind of a change. Oh, I really should change. Right, that hairstyle, maybe should change a little bit, right? It's the wrong muscle for me. But you understand, right? In other words, we just, instead of focusing on real change, cathartic change, personalistic change, we just content ourselves with cosmetic change. And that moment that could have been so transformative simply goes by with little or nothing concrete to show for it. Such a metaphor. Anyway, and I will say, by that, I just want to point out, that's what's happening with Sancheriv over here, so we're going to see this come out a little bit more. Sancheriv suffers this humiliating defeat. I will say, there's nothing that gets you to think about change more in life than humiliating defeat. We've all had it, we've all experienced it, and those are moments where often you're most open to anything and everything. Okay, so get a haircut. I'm going to make a see. So Sancheriv says, no man, where am I supposed to get a pair of scissors from? I'm going to the icy. So what happens? So he says to Sancheriv, look, there's a house over there. Go in there, get a pair of scissors from there. So as Sancheriv goes in, he finds scissors. So it says, this is a tremendous setup over here. Malachim come into that house, and they appear like people. They were grinding kasha. So Rashi says over here, Garine Tmore. It was date seeds. So they were grinding this up. So Amalei, how about this file? So here it says, can I buy a pair of scissors? Amalei, to call it Chad Guriya the Kasha. So they said here, there's no such thing like a free scissors, right? So you want scissors? Grind the Guriya of date pits with us. Okay, work a little bit and we'll give you these scissors. Tachan Chad Guriya. Gotcha. So Sancheriv ground up the date pits, right? And they gave him another tremendous Moshe skill. This is Sancheriv, right? Commander of the largest army in the civilized world at the time. And I must say, it's incredible, like desperation. Failure humbles you, and desperation, when a person is desperate, you do whatever you have to do to get the job done. Isn't that incredible? When we're riding high, so there's certain that I believe things that I'm not going to do. When I'm in trouble, we recognize you do whatever you have to do in order to get the job done. So Sancheriv now is afraid of facing the people back home. Right? He needs to get a haircut. He needs a pair of scissors. He's got to grind date pits. You're going to do what you got to do in order to get the job done. All right? So good. So by the time Sancheriv got back with the scissors, so the old man already became dark. Now the old man said, the old man is listen, I can't get a haircut in the dark. So bring me a fire. So the Gemara says, so also I sinura bahadi de kanafa play atli de nura de dikine. So what happened? Also guys, so as Sancheriv was bringing back the lantern, the fire, his beard caught fire a little bit, and it turned out it ended up singeing his beard. So ultimately, again, the old man ends up cutting off his beard and his hair. This is what people say. This apparently birthed the famous adage. Actually says if you go ahead and you set fire to an Iranian and he likes it, you can also go ahead and singe his beard, and it will be an unending source of entertainment. Okay? You can do that what you want, right? I don't have anything on it. Right? So like again, the idea over here, let's say, it's talking about also, I think the takeaway from this entire Gemara, in a serious sense, is life changed so dramatically. And we experience this in different ways. That a person could be on the top of the world one moment and literally again the bottom of the bottom the next. And what's so profoundly important, and again, to Sancheriv's, I think to Sancheriv's credit a little bit, you have to be able to roll with it. You have to be able to pivot. You have to be able to know what to do when you're the commander of the army, and you have to know what to do when you're a humble, defeated individual. And if you know this again, so now it's just a Sancheriv. Get a haircut, then get a haircut. Whatever you need to do. Listen, there are some people in life, when life doesn't go their way and the plan doesn't materialize, they simply get paralyzed. They don't know what to do. They're stuck. They can't get over the fact that life did not materialize the way that I wanted it, and they don't understand the power of the pivot. And I think you see this right here, to his credit. You don't become the commander of the largest army in the civilized world by just being a regular guy. Sancheriv must have had a piece of his co-host. Part of his co-host is the power of the pivot. You got to be able to lean into whatever life throws your way and recognize that whatever it is, figure it out. Also, Ashka, Rafa, we'll say it's incredible. So Sancheriv is journeying home. As he's journeying home, what does he find? He finds incredible stories. He finds a plank from Noach's table. From Noach's table. And we'll say, by the way, geographically, we know that, remember again, the table kind of, what's the word? Landed, was it? Dock? I don't know if it's dock per se. Grounded. But it seems like a Russian, like when it washes ashore, whatever. Dock, grounded, it stopped, right? On Hare Ararat, right? Which actually, by the way, interestingly enough, geographically, works along this idea as he's heading back to our shore. See, he finds a plank from Noach's table. This is incredible. Like, can you imagine, like again, just to understand, this is quite a day for Sancheriv. He ran into HaKadosh Baruch Hu, and I want to point out, the Ribono Shel Olam appeared to Sancheriv. Do you see what that means? Do you want to see what that means? Because again, Sancheriv, interestingly enough, remember, it goes on to we saw last week. Sancheriv was on a divine mission. His mistake was that he went after Yishalayim. That was his mistake. That was out of bounds for him. He defied the divine mandate. He was a Shaliach HaKadosh Baruch Hu, but he overstepped. You don't become a Shaliach of Hashem without possessing some type of personal greatness. See, Melech HaKadosh Baruch Hu, he met the Ribono Shel Olam. Next, he finds a plate from Noach's teva. Amar. Chaza Ashka Dapa Mitivusa Dila. Amar. Amar Hainu Elokar Rabba. The Shizve Noach Netifuna. And he said, oh, this is the great God who saved Noah from the flood. Amar, Ye'ezah Hu Gavra Matla, Makrab Mahu Train Binoi. So Sancheriv says, if I go and I'm successful, in other words, if I go and ultimately I'm able to survive and I'll reclaim my former greatness, I will offer up my 2 sons as a sacrifice to the God of Noah. To the God of Noah. Now, interesting, I will say, it seems to be that he's ascribing some type of divine power to the actual plank itself. In any event, he pledges to go and offer up his 2 sons. Well, as one can imagine, Shamuel Benoi, his sons heard about this and weren't overly excited about this promise, and therefore the Katlu, they killed him. Sancheriv is assassinated by his own sons. Sancheriv is worshipping his beauty, and as he's worshipping his Avodah Zarah, his own sons go ahead and kill him. I will say, by the way, it's also interesting, when you think about this imagery, Sancheriv is trying to hold on to a plank from Noach's teva. So listen, the Medrash tells us who else held on to Noach's teva and was saved? Og. The Medrash says that Og Melech HaBashan, right, was held on to the table and was saved. And I will say, in times of distress, everyone's trying to hold on to something. The issue is in life, you have to make sure that you're holding on to the right thing. You see, even here, Sancheriv is always the tragedy of Sancheriv. You don't have to feel about Sancheriv. The tragedy of his condition is so often he's so close to turning things around, but just never manages it to get together. In other words, this idea that he finds the plank of the table, and he's like, you know what? The Ribono Shel Olam, you could be my life preserver. Like, I could hold on to you and turn this around. And we're going to see this comes to a little bit, but yet, then he brings up offering his sons. It's always as if he misses it, just by a few steps. So close to being able to affect that real change, being able to turn things around, but always missing it by not being able to put the pieces directly together. It's incredible. So it's by Chalek Aleim Laila, so the Pasuk says, I will say, switching gears here for just a moment, this is Admon. Now this is in the story of Bereshis. Remember again, there was the battle of the 4 kings against the 5. The 4 defeat the 5, Adam goes to war against the 4. So the Pasuk says, Vayachalek Aleim Laila, Uva Avadat Vayaken. But literally again, the literal translation is, they split the night, Abram and his servants, and they smote the 4 kings. I'm Rabbi Yochanan. Also, Malach Shem is Ganano, the Abram Laila Shmo. There was actually an angel who was helping Avram Avinu to fight this battle, and the angel's name was Laila Shneimar V'Halayla Amar Horegever. Rabbi Yitzchak Nafka says, Sha'as Imo Maisa Laila. But ultimately, what it means is that the Rashi points out the stars, right? The stars actually fought on behalf of Avram Avinu. They actually did battle not on behalf of them. They fought together alongside Avram. Shneimar in Shamayim Nochamu HaKochavim in Siyosam Nucha in Sisra. Tava Nafka Midibar Nafka. The words of the Nafka, of the blacksmith, of Yitzchak, Nafka, are better than the words of Rabbi Yochanan. Rabbi Yochanan is known in Shas sometimes as Bar Nafka. So the words of the blacksmith are better than the words of the son of the blacksmith. Okay, so ultimately, Rish Lakish chooses what Yitzchak Nafka's idea, and the stars went well with Avram Avinu against the 4 kings. I was just point out over here how we've mentioned this many times on our journeys in Shas. Why does the Gemara need to call it Yitzchak Nafka? Okay, so simple answer is because there's more than one. There's more than one Yitzchak. I'll say the deeper message is, a lot of times in life we think that if we have a profession, That's my pitur from becoming an outstanding Talmid Chacham, a Gadol Batorah. So watch what the Gemara. If you ever want to follow the Gemara, says, by the way, you could be a blacksmith, you could be a Gadol Batorah. You could be a blacksmith and earn yourself a place on the page of Shas. You all have to work for a living. That's just the way that it is. Unless you think that your career exempts you from achieving excellence in Torah, not true. We have an obligation to be excellent in our professions, and we have an equal obligation, if not a greater obligation, to be excellent in Torah as well. There's no telling what we could become, even though we all have day jobs. Vayirdav ad Dan. So let's remember again, the pasuk said that Avinu pursued them, the 4 kings, up until Dan. So what happened in Dan? So Avinu saw, when Avinu was pursuing the kings, when he got to the area of Dan, suddenly again his strength was diminished. Why? Because he saw prophetically that his descendants would worship Avodah Zarah in Dan. So because Avinu's spiritual strength was weakened, as soon as they got to Dan, Shneimar, they must say, now what happened in Dan? Shneimar, Bayasan Esa Echa B'Beisel, Esa Echa Nasan B'Dan. This is actually referring to Yerovam ben Nevat. We spoke about this last week also. Yerovam ben Nevat, the first king over the split kingdom, Yehuda Yisrael, installed 2 idols, right? 2 calves, 2 golden calves. And one of them was put in the tribal area of Dan. It's incredible. So even though this wasn't going to happen until centuries later, nevertheless, Avinu's strength was diminished when he got to the future site of Avodah Zarah of his children. So to again, Nebuchadnezzar, the Zarah also, were not strengthened until he got to Dan. So here's the the following message was given by Yehuda ben Sarah. I will say, be careful with the Talmid Chacham who lost his learning because of extenuating circumstances. I will say, sometimes in life, a person gets older, they forget their learning, whether it's because of something like dementia or Alzheimer's, or whether, again, it's just part of getting old in life. Be careful with a Talmid Chacham who forgot his learning, even though he doesn't necessarily have the recall. That learning is still a part of who and what he is, and therefore there is an obligation to go ahead and respect it. Which also teaches us a tremendous life lesson as well. The power that Torah has upon us is not only in the knowledge that we retain. And this is a very important source of chizuk, especially for us, Dat Yomi Chevra. And a lot of times, one of the most beautiful things about Dat Yomi is you see so much in one day. One of the most difficult things about Dat Yomi is come the next day, I have absolutely no idea what I learned. Right? But so sometimes that's very frustrating for us because, like, what am I doing? What am I doing? So let's say, of course, now, again, the answer to that is, you know what the answer to that? The answer to that is Chazara. That's why a person has to conjure the daf. We know that. But let's say, in addition to that, the real power of Torah is what it does to you as a person, what it does to you in the Shema, and that has nothing to do with retention. It is entirely experiential. The act of sitting and learning Torah, by definition, fundamentally changes me as a person. And even if I don't remember one word, I am still a change human being. That's what Gemara says. You have a Talmid Chacham on something who forgot his learning. You think that because he can't recall it, therefore again, the Torah impacts him any less. He's still the same holy Jew, because Torah has imprinted on his neshama, fundamentally changed it. Furthermore, the Zara B'Vridin, also be careful with the Bridin. There's an interesting halakha, remember again from the last cycle in Kul, when we learned about this. When you check the birds, and you check Ophos, there's a blood vessel that runs next to the esophagus. There's machlokes as to whether or not that artery, because that allows the animal to bleed out faster and drain the animal of blood faster. That's called the breathing. The Gemara says, look at this move. Let's say, watch this. Be careful with the children of ignorant people. Shemehen Teipsei Torah, because from them, from the children of Amei Haaretz, ultimately again, that's where Torah will come from. And I'll say, this is an astounding Gemara. Take a look at Rashi for just a moment. It's the last Rashi on the right side. He's talking about over here children who grow up who are children of Amei Haaretz, who are children of ignorant people. And I will say, by the way, in this context, Amei Haaretz is not used in a disparaging way. It's used in a factual way. right? A person grows up in a home where his parents are ignorant. Right? But ignorant doesn't have to mean they're not ignorant. Just means they don't learn Torah. They don't learn Torah per se. So Rashi says an issue. And those children who grow up in a home of Amei Haaretz become Talmidei Chachamim. Lasos Lam Kavod. Make sure to give those Talmidei Chachamim whose parents are Amei Haaretz. Make sure to give them the greatest amount of kavod. Why? Shenehem Teitzei Torah Yisrael. Because those that Talmidei Chachamim are going to create and affect the greatest change for Am Yisrael. Sharei Yatzu Shmaya Batan Neymar. So we'll see examples. So we'll say, what's the pshat? What's the pshat? That it's the children of Amei Haaretz who make the greatest impact to Klal Yisrael. Not the children whose fathers are coming to come. What's the pshat? First, I think it's a very simple yisod. When a person grows up in a home of Amei Haaretz and then decides to become a Talmid Chacham, they have to work 10 times harder. Sometimes they have to work against parental resistance. Certainly, again, they have to learn a whole new body of things that perhaps they did not receive growing up. The push, right, and the commitment and the resilience that those Talmidei Chachamim have, sometimes people who grew up with it don't necessarily have the same thing. And therefore, ultimately, the contribution that those Talmidei Chachamim will make, ultimately, again, is tenfold over what others. It's an incredible idea. So, and again, but if you notice over here, the Gemara says, be careful. Now, if you have to tell someone to be careful, what does that mean? Right? That people generally, again, are not careful with this. Right? Why? Because we'll say it's so interesting in the world. It's so interesting in the world. We put so much primacy and importance on yichus. Yichus, right? This one has yichus, and this one has yichus, and yichus is wonderful. Yichus is wonderful. Right? Yichus is beautiful. It's fantastic. We all have beautiful yichus. You come out of the best yichus in the world. We put so much on. So Chazal are telling us, good, but just understand, it's often those who do not have the distinguished pedigree, but then decide to make something magnificent of themselves. Those are the agents of change. Those are the people, ultimately, again, who make the most dramatic and tremendous difference. The ones who society say are like, somebody was telling me the other day that a certain yeshiva, really didn't have its same standing anymore. Yeshiva, post-high school yeshiva. Why? This was the Rosh. I said, it's filled with flip-outs. I'm like, wow. Flip-outs. So, you know what Rosh flip-out? Flip-out is someone maybe grew up, like a little bit more modern, or maybe not, and then became much more flip-out. So first of all, I said, so you mean like people like we want to emulate, right? When you say flip out, you mean like so people who started with something and then decided to get more. That's a good. It's so warped. It's so warped that like in the world somehow someone who started with less and then chose more. That person is a tzaddik shebet tzaddikim, right? That person goes on a pedestal. A person who made a choice to be more, to do more, to accomplish more, even though perhaps they didn't have it growing up. Even though perhaps, again, maybe their parents did like it, don't like it, are supportive, aren't supportive, passively supportive, whatever it is, but they decide they want more. It's just so interesting that sometimes you have such a warped view of where actual greatness really comes from. It's very nice if you come from a family of righteous people. That's fantastic. Zachisa, incredible. But that does absolutely nothing for you except start you off at a higher place that you still have to accomplish yourself. Are we throwing fishes over here? Did I just see that? Oh, okay. All right. And I was saying, so that's how the Gemara has to say, Hizaru b'nei Amei Haaretz. Be careful with the children of Amei Haaretz, which means that the belt is not. But sometimes, again, Rabbi said, the greatest people in this world are the ones who aren't born with the spiritual silver spoon in their mouth, and instead try to accomplish great things on their own and make it. Those are the people who affect change. Incredible. The word Milsa Modinole. The word says Ki Ha Milsa Modinole. Sadik Ato Hashem Ki Arave Lecha. Mishpatim Adaber Oska. Madua Derfer Sham Tzalecha. Shalom Kol Bog De Bagat. Nitatem Gam Shar Shal Yelpu Gam also for Yakis. What's the shot in this passage? So this is Eov. No, sorry, Yirmiyahu. So Yirmiyahu here is asking, also the part of this puzzle we're going to focus on over here. The part of this puzzle we're going to focus on over here is that why is it that the wicked seem to go ahead and prosper? So the Gemara says like this. Mashallah Adam. Sorry. Maya Hadjulay. What was, answering back to Yirmiyahu Navi, he as Raglayim Ratasabi al Uthar, the eight his para as Hasusim Ba'aret Shalom Atabotea. What does this mean? Mashallah Adam Echad. Shalom Yokol and Yirmalu Tzil Parsal to Hasusim. So let's say he's a mash. Listen to this. What's a guy? The guy claimed that he could run faster than anything. He even run faster than horses. I could run 3 parcels. I won't say parcels, a lot of area. I can run 3 parcels before, right? And I could even outrun horses. Right? I could even run in swamps. Obviously, much harder to run in a swamp. So what happened? So now he was racing against the human runner. Raglim is a runner. And this human runner, outpaced him 3 milin, which is a much lesser distance, and the Abasha on dry land. So the Gemara said, Amalei, Umalif ne Ragli Kach, Lifnei Susim, Allah Kaskala. And we say to this guy, if you can't beat the human runner, you certainly can't outpace horses. If you can't beat the runner for 3 million, you certainly can't go ahead and you certainly can't outpace him for Gil Parcels. So the Gemara says, and if you can't outpace him on dry land, you certainly can't outpace anything on the swamp. So so to you, Yirmiyahu. So what does this mean? What does this mean? At the end of the day, what they're telling Yirmiyahu is that you don't understand the ways of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. That's simply it. You think you can understand, you think that you can see, you think that you know, but at the end of the day, you don't. You're bothered by the fact that I went ahead and I allowed Nebuchadnezzar to be successful in such a dramatic way. But just you should see, Nebuchadnezzar got the reward of 4 psios, of 4 steps. We'll see the story of those 4 steps in just a little bit. So if you see all of the reward that Nebuchadnezzar got for taking 4 steps, then ultimately, again, you're going to be overwhelmed. When I reward Avram, Yitzchak, and Yaakov, so Nebuchadnezzar took 4 steps and was rewarded. You'll be overwhelmed when you see the reward ultimately of Avram, Yitzchak, and Yaakov, who ran before me like horses. Again, we'll see that story in just a little bit. So the Gemara says, what do you mean? When did Nebuchadnezzar walk for HaKadosh Baruch Hu with 4 steps? What's that story? This is an incredible story. So it happened that Merudach Baladon, that was his name, Ben Baladon, son of Baladon, right, who was the king of Babel, sent a letter. Now the rest of the pasuk is, he sent a letter to Hiskiyahu because he heard that Hiskiyahu was ill, and then he was healed. Okay. So the Gemara says, because Hiskiyahu got sick, so this king, the king of Babel, Merodach Baladon, sent a letter and he gave to Hiskiyahu, what's going on over here? To which the Gemara says, in Mijosh es Mofes Haya. So the Gemara says, yes, because Baladon Merodach, or Merodach Baladon, he was very interested because he saw that when Hiskiyahu was healed, a miracle occurred. He was overwhelmed by this miracle, and he said, I got to find out about this guy, Hiskiyahu. What's his story? What was the miracle? Listen to this. Rabbi Yochanan. Also, Yom what's the better? I apologize. I know we're going quickly at some point. So actually, we're not remember what's that's going to be our topic for this year. Now, just like identify some of these incredible stories. The day that Achaz died. Who was Achaz? Achaz was the father of Hiskiyahu. Achaz was a tremendous Rasha. On the day that Achaz died, Shtei Sha'os Chaya. HaKadosh Baruch Hu shortened the day dramatically. caused the sun to set after 2 hours. Now, why did he do that? He did not want Achaz to be eulogized, and he did not want Achaz to be buried properly. So he dramatically went ahead and caused the sun to set prematurely. So what happened? So the Gemara says, and it was incredible. When Chizkiyahu was healed, so ultimately again HaKadosh Baruch Hu returned those 10 extra hours. So that's how beautiful this is. And then Chizkiyahu was healed, there were 10 extra hours of daylight in that day. Isn't that incredible? So the day was prolonged by 10 hours because he was healed. Obviously, again, the day was prolonged by everyone. So Baladan Merodach, and I keep getting his name wrong, Merodach Baladan ultimately saw this 10 extra daylight hours, like what's going on over here? So the Gemara says, so said, what is this? So I told him Chizkiyahu was ill, he became healed, and Abba Rosham gave him back 10 hours of daylight. Alright, so Amar Ika Gavra Kihai, Veloba Inu Shalma. So it's incredible. So Merodach Baladon said, listen, and there is a man like this who gets 10 extra hours of daylight from HaKadosh Baruch Hu. How can I not write him a letter and say a Shalom Aleichem? Right? I mean, you got to get to know a man like this. So the Gemara says, Kosvili, listen to this. So here is the letter that Merodach Baladon sent to Chizkiyahu. Here it is. The Gemara says, Kosvili, Shalom Aleichem Chizkiyahu. Peace be unto you, King Chizkiyahu. Shalom Lekarta Yerushalayim. Right? Peace unto Yerushalayim. Shalom Le'elokar Rabbo. Peace unto the great God. Peace unto the great God. Incredible. So the Gemara says, so what happened? Nebuchadnezzar suffered the Baladan Haba. So Nebuchadnezzar, now I'm going to say this, when Nebuchadnezzar was young, so what was his job? He was the scribe of the king. He was the scribe of Merodach Baladon. So the Gemara says, listen to this. So apparently Nebuchadnezzar wasn't there when Merodach Baladon wrote this letter. He was on break, so he comes back, he finds out that Merodach Baladon wrote this letter. Well, tell me what was the letter that was written. They told him the letter. So Nebuchadnezzar says something amazing. Nebuchadnezzar says the letter makes no sense. He says, you call the God of the Jews great, but you put him last, right? You say, Shalom Aleichem, great King Chizkiyahu. Shalom Aleichem, great Tzidk Yerushalayim. Shalom Aleichem, great God. And Nebuchadnezzar says, doesn't make any sense. If God is great, then where does he belong? All the way in front. We're saying, but this is Nebuchadnezzar. Shalom So Nebuchadnezzar says, how are you supposed to write it? Shalom Aleichem to great God, Shalom Aleichem to Chizkiyahu, Shalom Aleichem to Yerushalayim. So you can imagine, I've read one of these moments. Nebuchadnezzar's like, guys, I left for 5 minutes. Right? And you can't get the letter right. So what happens? They said then, so you've seen this expression before. That literally again, literally means he who reads the letter should be the one who goes ahead and delivers it. The idea being that sometimes if you have the good idea, execute. You have the good idea, execute. Don't come, basket full of good ideas. You have good ideas, execute them as well. So Nebuchadnezzar, the letter is in transit. You think that it should be redone? Okay, go after the courier and get it. So listen to this. Rabbi says, so listen to this. To his credit, Nebuchadnezzar runs after the courier. Roy Basrei, as he took 4 steps, Asa Gabriel opened. Gabriel stopped him. So I'm Rabbi Yochanan, listen to this. Because what was Nebuchadnezzar doing? Nebuchadnezzar was running after the courier because Nebuchadnezzar was concerned about the covet of the Ribono Shel Olam. Gabriel stopped him. Because had Nebuchadnezzar run any further, there would have been no way to stop his future carnage against Klal Yisrael. So I will say that's what we saw before. In the schus of the Arab Psios, the 4 steps of Nebuchadnezzar running after the courier because he thought the letter was not written in a dignified enough way to HaKadosh Baruch Hu, that gave Nebuchadnezzar ultimately again tremendous power over Klal Yisrael. And had the Malach Gabriel not stopped him where he was, who knows what the carnage would have been. We'll say absolutely amazing. But I just point out it was amazing. Sometimes it's always interesting to see like what makes great people great. Like how do overwhelmingly successful people become successful. So the Gemara tells a lot of these stories so that there's something to be learned. So what do you see in the story we have from Nebuchadnezzar? So let's say just on the most basic level, a willingness to take an idea and to implement it. A lot of times in life, we're chock full of ideas, and it's great. And I'm willing to take all my ideas, I'll alphabetize them, categorize them, anything you want, and then I'm ready to give them over to someone else. And then as long as someone else does the execution, what makes great people great is they have beautiful ideas and they are willing to put in the effort to implement. They don't delegate. They do what has to get done in order to get the job done. And Nebuchadnezzar has this insight. It's not this, okay, Chaver, who wants to run after the courier? Again, if he's the sofer to the king, by the way, that's a pretty important position. He could have gotten someone else to run after the courier, but instead he decides to do it himself. Because great people recognize that if you believe in something enough, roll up your sleeves and get it done. Don't wait for someone else to do the heavy lifting. Do the job yourself. Incredible. The Gemara goes back to, by the way, my baladon ben baladon. So the Gemara goes back over here to this king. I must say, I just want to point out over here, this king is the king of Babel before Nebuchadnezzar. So now his name was Merodach Baladon ben Baladon. That's a pretty strange name. Merodach, what does it mean, Baladon ben Baladon? Listen to this, we'll say, Amri, Baladon Malkahaba. Baladon was his father. Baladon, the father, was king. What happened? And apparently he had some type of illness. His face looked like a dog, transformed into a dog. Right? Again, I know the dog caucus is going to say, but it's so cute, so beautiful, so wonderful. Great, okay, good. You clearly see how Chazal feel about dogs. Okay, good. So anyway, so the Gemara says over here, he looked like a dog. His face became deformed. He can't be king. But it's the Babel. He can't become king with a deformed face. So he abdicated the throne. So his son Meroda becomes king. It's actually very beautiful. So his son Baladon becomes king, but as part of the way that his son gave his father covet is he took his father's name as his own. So instead of just being Merodach ben Baladon, he became Merodach Baladon ben Baladon. This was covered to his father who was still alive. So the Gemara says, "Hani d'chsid ben yichamidav ve'eved adonav." So this is what it means when it says a son will honor a father and a servant his master. Ben yichamidav hada aman. So we'll say, by the way, it's actually pretty striking. It's just interesting to see that the example that Chazal want to bring on this pasuk of Ben Yechabedah, which is from Malachi, the Gemara quotes it. The example it gives ultimately again is Merodach Baladon ben Baladon. There are a lot of other examples of Kibbutz Avos, but it's interesting to see that they choose this one. The Gemara says, "Eved Adonav." What's the Eved Adonav? B'chsiv u'b'chodesh hachamish be'esron l'chodesh yishnas sha'aseh shon l'melech Nebuchadnezzar ba melech Babel ba Nebuchadnezzar ravat tabachim Ama l'fnei melech Babel b'Yushalayim v'Yisrof as beis Hashem as beis Hamelech. So let's listen to this. So the example, who is the example of the servant who revered his master? The servant who revered his master was Nebuchadnezzar. Now we're transitioning back. Remember again, just so you get what we know, Nebuchadnezzar is the king of Babel. Nebuchadnezzar was his top general. Now Nebuchadnezzar was a cruel and bloodthirsty man. He's given the appellation Rav HaTavachim, the chief butcher. The chief butcher. In fact, we speak about Nebuchadnezzar in the keynotes in Tisha B'Av, and we speak specifically about Nebuchadnezzar's bloodthirst for children, the cruelty that he exhibited towards children. So the Gemara says over here, so the Gemara quotes the pasuk that says that Nebuchadnezzar goes ahead, he burns the house of HaKadosh Baruch Hu and the palace of the king. Now the pasuk said that Nebuchadnezzar was standing before Nebuchadnezzar, his master. The Gemara will say, I'm a base. When we saw Nebuchadnezzar in Yerushalayim, someone say, now let's just get the judges right over here. Nebuchadnezzar is in Yerushalayim because he's just destroyed the Beis Hamikdash. He's destroyed ultimately again the palace of the king. But it says that he's standing before Nebuchadnezzar, the king of Babel. But Nebuchadnezzar was never in Yerushalayim. The Gemara says, Nebuchadnezzar was Nebuchadnezzar in Yerushalayim. Vaksiv Vayalu also Melech Babel Rivlasa. So Nebuchadnezzar was never in Eretz Yisrael. He was in Antochia. Right, that's where he was. So how does it say? How does it say that Nebuchadnezzar stood before Nebuchadnezzar? Let's say Tzadik on base 96 feet 3 lines down. The most Yochno Haisa Kakukolo Amar Kapso. That Nebuchadnezzar had such covet for his king that he had an image of Nebuchadnezzar literally engraved on his chariot. So he felt like he was always before his king. Or the other thing, it says he had so much reverence for Nebuchadnezzar, so much reverence that it was as if he was standing before the king at all times. Incredible. So Rabbi says as follows. So now we're jumping back a little bit. So the initial attack on Yerushalayim. So it says, the Shah Parzalon. So Nebuchadnezzar had sent to Nebuchadnezzar wagon loads of 300 of the sharpest axes that were so sharp that the metal could cut through metal. All right, the Shah Parzalon. And all the axes broke, trying to break down one gateway of Yerushalayim. So fine. Boy, let me hadar. Omar, Mistafina Dololi Abdu bi ki echi da Abdu b'sancheret. So it says this. The Nebuchadnezzar is ready to turn back. Now why is Nebuchadnezzar ready to turn back? Because remember again, it wasn't so long beforehand that what happened? Sancheriv, right? So in other words, everybody knows the story of Sancheriv, the massive defeat that has been fought. So now you have 300 of the sharpest axes, metal that can cut through metal, and all of them break on one door of Yerushalayim. This does not look like a good omen. So Nebuchadnezzar is ready to turn around, go back home. Nakka kala ba'amar. Shavar bar Shavar. So Baskol came out. Terrible. Baskol came Shavar. And I was like, Shavar bar Shavar literally means a jumper. Someone who jumped. Rashi says, okay, Shavar bar Shavar is on the right hand column of Rashi, about 10 lines into the short lines. Doleg bar Doleg, Kum Bakava Shli Shalayim. The Zarin Kalmar. So it's like, this is interesting. So apparently, so the Gemara says, apparently that we called him the jumper because, interestingly enough, Nebuchadnezzar was part of Sancheriv's campaign as well. And interestingly enough, let's remember again, what was Sancheriv's mistake? What was Sancheriv's mistake? He missed the window. So apparently, Nebuchadnezzar was the one who was urging Sancheriv, attack now, attack now, attack now. That's why it's called the jumper. That he was ready to leap into battle, to jump into battle. So the Baskol comes up and says, "Jumper, don't abandon your plan over here." So the Gemara says, "Shavar bar Shavar." Shavar demata zimna demikdash shacharit beheichel mikle. So ultimately, again, it is time for the Beis Hamikdash to be destroyed. I will say, by the way, I just want to point out that these Gemaras are very profound because a lot of times when we suffer misfortune at the hands of the nations of the world, what compounds our pain is the notion of a feeling of abandonment by a Kadosh Baruch Hu. Now, what's interesting to what say is Chazal always tell us nothing ever happens to us unless the Ribono Shel Olam wants it to happen. And even when there's pain, and even when there's suffering, even when there's loss, it only comes from HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Now, on one hand, it's painful because why does HaKadosh Baruch Hu do this to us? On the other hand, there is, interestingly enough, or ironically enough, a certain element of nechama. Because I know it's not something that someone else is doing to me, it's something that HaKadosh Baruch Hu is doing to me. Which means that the Rebbe Shalom is choreographing even this overwhelmingly painful situation, which is difficult as it is, but I know it's not haphazard, I know it's not random, I know it's coming from HaKadosh Baruch Hu. So the Baskol comes out and says, Nebuchadnezzar, don't abandon ship, it is time for the Beis Hamikdash to be destroyed. So watch this. There was one axe left. One axe left. Asya Maki Bekupe Be'ivda. So now there's one axe left. So now this is interesting. Nebuchadnezzar is a very smart man. So Nebuchadnezzar realizes now that he's at a very, very dangerous crossroads. Am I going to be like Sancheriv and be wiped out by Hashem, or am I going to be the agents of Hashem? So what does he do? He takes the last axe. He goes over to the gate of Yerushalayim. He doesn't hit the gate. With the sharp part. He hits the gate with the handle, the blunt, the dull part. Why? What's his logic? His logic is like this. If the Shema Kadosh Baruch Hu, if the Moshe wants him to destroy the Beis Hamikdash, the gate will open even with the blunt part. So sure enough, He knocked against the gate with the dull heart, and the gate fell down. Shneimar, Yodeh Kennedy Lamayla B'Slach It Kadumos Havakato V'Azi Adamata L'Hayamei. So now, this is a tragically overwhelming story. The Rizar Ravatabach in the Chief Butcher knocks down the gate of Yerushalayim, and he's literally again killing everyone in sight until he gets to the Beis Hamikdash. Adlik Bey Nila. He sets the Beis Hamikdash. He sets the Beis Hamikdash on fire. So this is the overwhelming Gemara. Gava Heichale. As Zoran lights the Beis Hamikdash on fire, the Beis Hamikdash itself begins to ascend heavenward, almost as if the Beis Hamikdash is trying to save itself from what is occurring. Can you imagine the Beis Hamikdash uproots itself and begins to go ahead and literally ascend heavenward? And what happened? Darku Bey Min Shemayim. And the Ribono Shel Olam pushed it back down. The Beis Hamikdash itself is trying to escape. The Beis Hamikdash itself is trying to say, you know what, like, sometimes even the Beis Hamikdash sees all the pain, all the suffering, all the hostages, and everything that happens in this world. And the Beis Hamikdash just wants to remove itself from this mission. The Beis Hamikdash doesn't want this mission. She says, enough. Shechina says, there's a plan. Whatever the plan is, there's a plan. So the Shechina itself takes its hand and literally pushes the Beis Hamikdash back down. Overwhelming. Shneimar, Gat Darach Hashem B'Rasulos Tasihuda. So one can imagine at this point in time, Yehud Zaran is feeling a little bit arrogant. After all, again, he's met with ridiculous success, right? Burning down the house of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Nafka Baska V'Amra Lei Amakatila Katlas Heichela Kalyas Kimcha Tachina Tachina. Yehud Zaran, calm down. You killed a dead nation. You destroyed a destroyed building. Literally, again, you ground up wheat that was already flour. Trump was telling the Rosarin is, you didn't do anything. I did this. I did this. You're carrying out my will. Don't think for a moment that this is your success. Right, that this is your accomplishment. Everything that you're doing is only occurring because I'm allowing you to. The same way that if you're coming to grind flour that's already flour, you're not doing anything. So that's an incredible story here. Okay, so what's this? This is a tragic story. It's a tragic story. It's almost like the college saying that they have to do tshuva or they're going to be destroyed. How did Klal Yisrael deal with this message? They killed Zechariah. Now they killed Zechariah in the Beis Hamikdash itself. So what happens? So the Vuzar is standing in the Beis Hamikdash, and he sees he sees that there's blood that's boiling, literally bubbling blood in the Beis Hamikdash. So Zechariah says to the people, Jews in the Beis Hamikdash, what is this? I said, don't worry about that. That's just sacrificial blood that spilled. So the Vuzar says that doesn't make any sense. What does he do? I see So ultimately, one of the Zara does, he shucks an animal, takes the blood from the shucked animal, compares it to this blood that's running this milk, so it doesn't look like the same kind of blood. It doesn't look like the same kind of blood. I think you're lying to me. He says, so the Zara says, either tell me what this is, or literally again, I will peel the skin off your body with iron cold. The man who was both a Kohen and the Navi. He prophesied to the Jewish people about the destruction of Beis Hamikdash, and the Klal Yisrael, we killed him. We killed him because we didn't like his message. So the Zara says, okay, I will appease Chizkiel. I'll appease him. I see Rabbanon, Kato Iludia Balona. Whereas I'll avenge Chizkiel's blood. Zechariah's blood. So what does he do? He gathers up the Rabbanon, the rabbinic leadership. He kills them all, but the blood didn't stop bubbling. He brought the school children. Kato Iludia, he slaughtered them. Below Nach, and the blood did not stop. I see Pirkei Kahuna Kato, he brought young Kohanim. killed them, and the blood did not stop bubbling. So the Gemara says, Ad Katil Iluya Tishin Va'Adarivo, until he slaughtered 940,000 people below Noch, and ultimately again the blood did not stop bubbling. Karev Legade. So the Vudzarn goes over to the blood and he says, Zechariah, Zechariah, Tovim Shebahem Ibadet. So it's only Gemara. So when the Vudzarn says, Zechariah, Zechariah, literally again I've slaughtered the best of Klal Yisrael. Should I kill more? Miyad, no. In that moment again, so the blood of Zechariah stopped bubbling. And also, such a long, you should just know, by historical accounts, it's interesting to note that close to 1 million Jews were slaughtered when the Beis Hamikdash fell. It was destroyed. So it's interesting. A lot of times, like Gemara, sometimes numbers are hyperbolic. It's interesting. The 940,000 number is again close to 1 million people fell. That's why when we think about destruction of the Beis Hamikdash, we have to think about just the destruction of the structure. If we forget about just the colossal loss of life, over almost 1 million people. So the Gemara says, so now so literally the Vudzara says, Zechariah, what else do you want? I killed the Rabbanim. I killed the children. I killed the Pirkei Kahuna. I killed the best of Klal Yisrael. You want more? You want more blood? You want more bloodshed? And then the blood stopped bubbling. So we'll say, the Gemara says, well, stop here in just one minute. The Gemara says, here's Tshuva B'daite. So this one of the says something amazing happened, which is, so the Vudzara says, as they say, like, Mashu lo normali, right? This is not normal. This is not a normal Zach over here, right? And he has thoughts of Tshuva. Why does he have thoughts of Tshuva? He says, Mahem shelo igdu ele nefesh achas, kach, hugavra matehevi alev. So the Vudzara says like this. Klal Yisrael was held to such a degree of accountability because they killed one person, they killed Zechariah. So the Vudzara says, what's going to happen to me? I killed almost 1 million people. What's going to be with me? Arak shade portisa lebese v'izgaya. Crazy. The Vudzara sends a letter to his house saying, Chevra, I'm not coming home. And he goes off and he converts. So we'll say absolutely overwhelming mercy. Even the Vudzara, and again, Rabbi Kabachim, the chief butcher, has this overwhelming moment of here Tshuva. I just want to point out also over here, the Lashon over here is here Tshuva. You know, the Lashon of the Rambam in Hilchos Tshuva. Okay, well, this one, I'll just tell you this very quickly. The Lashon of Hilchos Tshuva, Parak Aleph Halacha Aleph, is Kishiyasa Tshuva, Chayav Nizvados. So it's interesting that what does it mean Kishiyasa Tshuva? What is that Lashon Kishiyasa Tshuva? The Gifter, Rav Shiva has a beautiful sefer called Hirurei Tshuva. The Gifter writes, Rabbi Salvation has a small idea as well, that the first step of Tshuva is Hirur Tshuva. What's Hirur? Hirur is a thought. Before you even do anything concrete, before I change anything about my life, the first step in Tshuva is that thought. What's that thought? That thought is, I can't go on the way things are. The first step in Tshuva is this level of kagnish, where I say to myself, I gotta change. Things just have to be different. How, what, when, where, that remains to be seen. But I know that the way things are now should not be the way they go forward. Nebuchadnezzar has that moment of here, right? As he's standing there with blood of precious Jews on his hands, standing in a Beis Hamikdash that is going up in flames, has this cathartic moment up here, says, you know what, I don't know what I'm going to do, but I know that I can't continue this way. Runs away from everything, gives up everything, and goes on to become a ger, goes on to become a member of Klal Yisrael. I will say, the story's not over, but we're going to stop here for today. The rest of Nebuchadnezzar's story and the story of other great ger and Miyat Hashem tomorrow's daf. Want to start to go outside? Shkoyach.
No, I didn't say that, but when you're a kid, everything's good. I'll eat fucking cardboard and say it's good. I would love to do this. Sphere seems very cool. Yeah, so
all right, Tevo's another great day.
Those are two comparable things. Yeah, I mean, it looks fucking great, but the product is shit. It's just like so not true. I watched the UFC card. It was fucking awesome. I loved it. Yeah, Luke was saying the fights are really good on this line. Allegedly, Jesus Christ. Tease tell. This makes sense because I thought it was actually funny. Okay, so Brendan Chop slammed UFC event at the Sphere, right? Brendan Chop got caught, so he just took that from somewhere else, basically. Oh, man. Damn. But I should have seen that coming. He's the goat of stealing shit, dude. He's the Michael Jordan of taking takes. Okay, so here we go. I didn't actually line these ones up, so I might be like, come back to it later, but post my air pumper. If you're over 25 at Burning Man Grow Up, is something he's on the podcast. And it's just real quick showing him being a grown man. You know what I mean? Straws, right? Just get some bits, soy boy, right? You know, no problem with this, right? He's in. If you're at 25 at Burning Man, grow up like this, right? He should be like this, right? Yeah, I see what you're doing here. No, I can feel that, right? Yeah, no, it's my takeaway too, but grow up like this. Yeah, be, you know, do the right, be a man. Yeah, if you reach a certain age, you're over 25, fucking, that's the kind of shit, like how much, like an adult man would do. But bleach your hair white. Get a copy of the T-ball game, you know. Grow up, dude. Where are you gonna put your stuff if you don't have a copy of your stuff?
What is this bullshit?
Think about it.
Oh, this says verify your age. I'm throwing fists.
Post by haphazard. Papa confirms he drove drunk daily during an on-air convention for Chin very long. So it's very long. We can cut out things that we want
Look
to.
at this. Let it.
Remember people make fun of you drinking at 8 a.m.? Like, yeah, drinking here. Every shot, do 3 dribbles a day. Hammer right, you know. That's the bulk of the clip right there. Okay. But then they just have an intervention for a chick. Sorry for burping, but that's disgusting. Jeff, you said you stopped drinking a while ago. Is it still sober? Still sober. 11 months. You check maybe you had check one time. Because he said you felt way better.
All right, you all say good morning, Chodesh. It's supposed to be able to begin the new month together. We're going to set and so I can begin by thanking all of our sponsors for this morning. I know we have a lot of sponsors this morning to thank. Okay. The saying, Steve and Terry Zinn for dedicating all the shiurim this month of Cheshvan, loving memory of Steve's father, Albert Zinn, Bunny C. Ben Chaim Zichron Livracha, on his 20th yahrzeit. To thank our week of learning sponsor, Zevi Daniel, who is excited to be back in person for a few days to learn with our holy Chevra. There is no shir like our shir, no Chevra like our Chevra. In belated honor of David Schwartz's remarkable Siyum HaTorah, Mazel Tov. Got your only sponsor with today, Baruch Hashem, Kazlaxi version of today's 54th yahrzeit for Morris Sandler, Moshe Yehuda ben Avram HaKohen Zichron Livracha, as well as for the upcoming 13th yahrzeit for Sheldon Berman, Shmuel Yosef ben Shalom Tuvia Zichron Livracha on the 6th of Cheshvan. And got your only today sponsored by the Tusk Children. To our Papa, we love you and are always rooting for you from all over the world. We love you. Absolutely beautiful. I didn't read that thing ahead of time. All right, so let's say good morning. Let's begin. We have a lot to do today, Baruch Hashem. A lot to do today. Today's day is a Lamed Tes. We are picking up Hashem on Lamed Ches Amid Beis. Way up top, 2 dots, but it's okay. It really is fucking flows quickly. Says the Gemara, Tanya. So we left off lot 38b at the 2 dots, 2, 4, 5, 6 lines down from the top. 6 lines down from the top. Tanya. The says as follows. Remember again, still are pretty much our same fundamental machlokes from our Mishnah, which was halacha l'maaseh again. What is the minimum number of hazos or zrikos that you need in order to go ahead and allow a carbon to be effective? So generally, the halacha is, by general kabbalas halacha is 1. What we call halacha achos shishtayim. 1 that's 2. The machlokes with Shammai Beis Hillel is in the case ultimately again of chatos. The Shammai says you require 2, Shtayim Shein Arba. Beis Hillel says even by chatos ultimately again it is 1. It is 1. Okay. So the Rebbe says something like that. Bryce that's tiny. Rabbi Eliezer Yaakov Omer. The Shammai Omer Shtei Matarah Shebechatos the Achos Shebechol Hazloch. So the Shammai says as follows. The Shammai says, so again, in general, two matanos when it comes to a chatos. Remember again, that's Shtayim Shein Arba. So you need two blood applications by a chatos and one blood application by all other karbanos. And that does two things. Number one, matiros. Matiros means that allows the carbon to be effective, and mefaglos means you could render it pegel. So in other words, echatos can only be rendered pegel according to Beis Shammai is if you have an invalidating intent during both two of the zritos, right? By regular karbanos, even by one of the zritos. Beis says no. Beis only afa shebechatos va'afa shebechalos lochim matares u'mefaglos. Beis says no. Both by chatos as well as by general karbanos. The halacha is materes u'mifagyares, which is that halacha l'maisa, one blood application allows the carbon to be effective, and therefore with one blood application, ultimately again, a carbon can become pegel. So we'll say this is fascinating. Masked la Raboshia, in came, listening a gabi kuli b'shan b'chumei b'silal. Hold up. This should be part of the list of the kulas of Beis Shammai and the kulas of Beis Hillel, right? The stringencies of Beis Shammai and the leniencies of Beis Hillel. Why will I say? Because again, remember, Beis Shammai ultimately again is being mekel. How is he being mekel? Because according to him, a chatas only becomes pegel if you have two zrikas, right? If you have an invalidating intent by two of the azos, by two of the blood applications. Beis Hillel says even by one. So Beis Hillel is being machmir, Beis Shammai is being mekel. So why not add this to the short list of items that Beis Shammai is mekel on and Beis Hillel is machmir on? Incredible. To which the Gemara says, Rashi says over here, listen, lahach plugda be'etios, gavikula b'shamai, shekula nistru b'mishka edios. I will say, remember again, many of you asked this, in Shas, so edios is often in the same volume as haris, right? Interestingly enough, right, edios, because edios is really only mishnayos, is not part of the Daf Yomi, but interestingly enough, in the sentence edios, ultimately, again, this list of the chumras of Beis Hillel, the kulas of Beis Shammai included, so this should be there. Yet this doesn't show up. So this is so interesting. No. Ki itshel had tera itshel, the holiday Beis Shammai chumra. No. When the Shiloh was asked, so interesting. When the Shiloh was asked, under what circumstances are you permitted to consume the meat? Take a look at that just a moment. We have tera itshel. It's like a cross.
Look at this.
About 10 lines, 8 lines, 7, 6. 5, maybe 4. It's somewhere between 4 and 8 lines down. The Gemara says, the way this question was asked in the base measures was in the following way. If you did one blood application by a chatas and then the rest of the sacrificial blood spilled. So what Hadam Asilmar says, or no, can you eat the meat? And can you offer up the sacrificial parts or not? And what's the halacha? Well, what's true? Under Beis Shammai, upas. So Beis Shammai said, no. Ultimately, again, it's puzzle. It's puzzle, right? Because remember, Beis Shammai needs 2 blood applications, ultimately, again, by a chatas. And therefore, Beis Shammai says, no, you can't eat the meat. Beis Hillel says, yes, you can eat the meat. Why? Because you only need one blood application. So from the perspective that the question was asked, right? Beis Shammai was the machmir, because Beis Shammai says you can't eat the meat because you need 2 blood applications, you only had 1. And Beis Hillel was the mekel because they said you could eat it. Incredible. I'll say, what a Musar Haskell. That in life, it's not just about what you say, but it is about how you say it. My children know this. There's one thing my wife always says over and over. So even as adults, she says to me, it's never just what you say, it is always how you say it. Tone and facial expressions, everything makes a difference. So this is incredible. Same question, but asked from a different perspective. So from one perspective, Beis Shammai is the mekel, Beis Hillel is the machmir. From the other perspective, no, Beis Shammai is the machmir, Beis Hillel. Or how, not just what you say, but always how you say it. Incredible. Let's go back to it. How Rabbi Yochanan, Shalosh Matana Shebechatos, Einam Balas Balayla. So let's listen to this. So just to understand, by chatos, generally by chatos, there are 4 blood applications, 4 hazos, 4 sprinklings. Now, the machlokes of Shammai is how many of those are necessary? Beis Hillel, 1, Beis Shammai, 2. Now, these Gemara is going to operate under the assumption that we're going like Beis Hillel. that by a chatos, ultimately, again, really, you must have one blood application. Obviously, the goal is how many should you have? How many should you have? 4, right? You should have 4 because that's the man, right? You should have 4, right? You should always have 4. That's the ideal. That's the ideal. But halacha l'maisa, again, halacha l'maisa, you need at least 1. That's. So I'm just pointing this out. Even though I was operating under the assumption that we pass like this, so we'll see whether or not that's true. So let's go. I'm going to be open. Shalosh matana shebechatos, the 3 blood applications. Now what that means is, what's the 3? After you do what we'll call the first primary one, which is the one that essentially allows the carbon to be effective, the remaining 3. What's their status? So the Gemara says, Einon balls by the Gemara is essentially, let me just say this for just a second. The Gemara is going to show us like this. Since the remaining 3 are not as quote-unquote as necessary. I'm careful with that because of course it's necessary, the Torah mandates it. But since it's not necessary in the same way as the first, to a certain degree, the last 3 are treated a little bit differently than the first. There are certain similarities they have to the first and certain differences they have to the first. So here we go. So the Gemara says like this. So what? 8 ba'os ba'layla, they cannot be spun at night. You can't sprinkle it at night. Ba'os la'achar misa. But this is very interesting. Let's say Reuven is bringing a chatos, right? Reuven is bringing a chatos. So Reuven is the Yisrael coins, offering it up. And after the first sprinkling, Reuven died. So the halacha is you could do the rest of the sprinklings even though Reuven died. Now, we'll say, contrast that with, let's say, the chef of the carbon, and then Reuven died. Before the first act of Yudah, you could not do it. You could not carry on with the carbon. But once the first week is done, you can even do the subsequent ones. But if you do these other zrikos outside of the Beis Hamikdash, ultimately, again, you will be chayiv. Okay, incredible. Rabbi says, in certain respects, the last three hazos are like the first one. And in certain respects, they're more lenient. They're like themselves, meaning they're more lenient. What does this mean? So on one hand, So on one hand, again, you can't do it outside of the Beis Hamikdash. You can't do it at night. It requires a color. These are all about the last 3. By klisharis, it requires a service utensil. Carrying the etzba, ultimately it's applied on the corners of the mizbeach with the finger of the kohen. Kibus, laundering. Right, and laundering, we'll see what it is in just a moment, v'shirayim, and the leftover blood, kitchilas. In all of these areas, the last 3 sprinklings are like the first. Now let's say that, just let's look specifically at the last couple. What does this mean? Kibus. If you look at Rashi chutz, if you actually go into the wide lines, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 lines into the wide lines. It's the middle of a Rashi, 3 words on the end of the line, the kibus. What's the case of kibus? What's the case of laundering? This is fascinating. In mitas medana chatas ala beged, the achar shenasa mematana achas, tone kibus. And we'll say if blood splatters on the clothing of the kohen after he did the first act of sprinkling, sometime during the last 3, the halacha is that his clothing requires laundering. Kibechsiv v'ashayiza midama. Kilu nitas kodem lakol. Aval nosan komat noseh ve'achar kach nitas min hashirayim ein tone kibus kidamin b'shmayim. It's just an interesting fact. The halacha is that if blood splatters on the kohen's clothing, any time during any of the zrikos, ultimately the kohen requires kibus, requires laundering. If, let's say, blood splatters after the sprinkling, let's say he's pouring out the remnants of the blood, and then blood splatters, it does not require kibus. It does not require laundering. So in this respect, the last 3 are like the first one. Now, what does this mean on a practical level? What it means is this: I'll say halacha l'maisa. Any leftover blood, you can't just discard it summarily, drained by the base, which we'll talk about that. So these are all the ways in which the last 3 sprinklings are like the first. On the other hand, Nisa, lo shayu v'lo mefagla. On the other hand, right? Ultimately, again, when it comes to Nisa, Rashi says, "Bos l'chata la'achar Nisa v'dam elel, lo shayu v'lo ma'agla, v'lo ayri l'gavai kisofan." On the other hand, they'll say that halacha l'maisa, so the last 3 can be brought even after the death of the owner. right? So remember again, if the owner dies, if Reuben dies before the first act of sprinkling, can't bring the carbon. If he dies after the first, but during the last three, can't bring it, right? Lo sharia v'lo mefadlo. The last three do not commit the carbon, right? They're not the matir, and also the carbon cannot become piggled through an erroneous intent. And ultimately, again, they cannot be brought inside. Again, we'll see exactly. We'll see what it means. But Pashas, what that means is, if you have a chatas achito, which is a chatas offered on the outside, and you bring the blood inside of the Beis Hamikdash and sprinkle it there, that does not invalidate the carbon. In all of these cases, so far. So in these last categories, the last three sprinklings ultimately again are kind of reckoned on their own. So we'll say, so again, so fascinatingly enough, Papa says, here's what we're doing. Operating with the idea like Pesilo, the first act of sprinkling is the determinant of the effectiveness of the carbon. Obviously, it's a mitzvah to do the remaining three, but Allah again, in certain respects, the first three are like the first one, and they're different than the first one. How are they like the first one? One more time. You can't do it outside of the Beis Hamikdash, can't do it at night, requires a coin, requires a kisharis, done with the finger of the coin is sprinkled on the corner. If blood splatters on the coin's clothing, he requires kibbutz, laundering. Leftovers are poured out by the yisod, by the base of the mizbeach. In this respect, the last three are just like the first one. How are they different? Number one, the last three can be done even after the death of the owner. That's misa. No sharia. They do not permit the carbon. Last three can't make the carbon piggle, right? Ultimately, again, if they are brought inside the Beis Hamikdash, they do not go ahead and invalidate the carbon. Incredible. I'm not Papa. The Papa says, so Papa says, where do I know this? Now the Papa specifically asking about kibbutz. Like the halacha is that if any of the blood during any of the sprinklings, specifically even the last three, splatters on the clothing of the Kohen, ultimately again there's a din kibbutz. He has to launder. So Papa says, where do I know this from? This time, because we learned on this night, Nitas Minat Sabra Alabag and Enoton kibbutz. Very interesting. When the Kohen did the shkita, the blood splattered from the neck onto the clothing of the Kohen. Ultimately, again, there is no din of laundering. He doesn't have to launder, which is very interesting, right? Because why? Which makes sense. It's not sacrificial blood yet. Remember, when does it become sacrificial blood? When? Only once it comes into a kisharis. So, again, let's say the Kohen is going ahead and sprinkling on the mizbeach, and there's splashback, right? He goes ahead and he sprinkles it, and it splatters back on his clothing. Also, this does not require kibbutz. What do you see from here? But any blood that is fit to be applied on the mizbeach, again, if it gets on the Kohen's clothing, does require laundering. So therefore, what? Any of the sprinklings, any of the 4 sprinklings, that is blood that is fit to go on the mizbeach, and therefore again requires kibbutz. The Gemara says, by using this logic, this blood splashed back, let's say you're pouring it down by the yisod, by the base of the mizbeach, and so if it splashed back, based on what you said, you would not require kibbutz because this is not blood that is fit to go on the corners. So the Gemara says, ultimately again, but yet we know that's not halacha. Halacha is if there is splashback from blood being poured out by the yisod. It does require laundering, which the Gemara says, you're right, ultimately again, it comes to exclude blood that was already sprinkled. So blood that was already sprinkled, ultimately again, does not require kibbutz. The Gemara says, whose opinion does this reflect? Whose opinion does this reflect? The Gemara said, Rabbi Nechemia. He said, Rabbi Nechemia Omer, Shiyari Hadam Shehikrivan B'chotz Chayu. So let's say this is very interesting. So Halacha L'maisa, Rabbi Nechemia says that Shirayim. Remember, what's Shirayim? Shirayim is leftover blood. Leftover blood. Generally, we're going to see leftover blood is dealt with in different ways, but one thing is usually clear, which is it's being poured down in some directed way in the Beis Hamikdash. So Nechemia says that Shiyari Adam, leftover blood, Shekiva B'chutz, that was offered up outside of the Beis Hamikdash, Chayiv. One is liable for that, which is actually quite interesting. Take a look at Rashi for just a moment. Shiyari Adam, last 2 lines in the Gemara, second to last line, and then Rashi, sorry, Afshal Chatao Sakitzono Sheikrivan B'chutz, Chayiv. Alma dam kachashim. So what do you see from here? Rabbi Nechemia holds that there's liability even for offering up shirayim blood outside of the Beis Hamikdash. What does that show you? That shirayim blood has the status of sacrificial blood. Quite interesting. So the Gemara says, "Emer d'sham k'Rabbi Nechemia le'yin ha'alo." So when does Rabbi Nechemia say that? That's in terms of like offering it up. And the Gemara says, however, midi dehavi ayvar l'pidarim, because in that respect, leftover blood is no different than sacrificial limbs. Just like sacrificial limbs, again, one of the things we've already learned is at what point in time does the covenant become effective? What point in time? Zrika. Right? Now again, but yet, still there's a mitzvah to burn the sacrificial parts. I understand the means of sacrificing, offering that blood makes sense. It's like Ivar Bidarim. Laying kibos mishamis. Let me try to say that kibos. The Gemara is trying to suggest over here that Nechani would say that if Shirayim blood splashes back on the Kohen's clothing, that he should require kibos. The problem just is the limud we were saying before says that. Let me take one step back. The Gemara said only blood that is fit to be applied on the corners, which essentially means sacrificial blood. If that gets on the Kohen's clothing, he's obligated to launder. That would exclude blood that, let's say, is being poured on the base, being poured out Shirayim, and then splashes back. But yet the Brisa says that even if Shirayim blood gets on the Kohen's clothing, he does have to be keepers. Which Gemara says, it must be Rabbi Nechemia. Because Rabbi Nechemia essentially holds that halacha l'maaseh Shirayim blood still has the same status as carbon blood. Where do we see that from? Because halacha l'maaseh Rabbi Nechemia says that if you offer up Shirayim blood outside of the base of Mikdash, ultimately, again, there's liability. To which the Gemara says, hold up. The Gemara says, "Le'inyan kibos mishamis." I don't understand. Just because Rabbi Nechemia says that if you offer up Shirayim blood outside of the base of Mikdash, you're chayiv, how do you know that means that he holds that if it gets on the Kohen's clothing, that there's a din of kibos? To which the Gemara says, The Gemara says, mishamis le'in. So, yes, actually, that is what Rabbi Nechemia holds. Top of the yes, but Tanya, you must remember that Tanya, we've seen this. Tanya could mean one of two things in Gemara, right? It could either mean ultimately, again, a question, right? How can you say this? Tanya, or it could be a support. How do you know the difference? Hashem for Rashi. Rashi almost always, it seems to me, almost always makes the same comment. If you look at the first Rashi on top, the Hashanya, Benichusa. Benichusa means as a support. I'm almost positive that like 9 out of 10 times when the Hatanya is a support, Rashi always gives that one word. So important to have a Tov to Rashi. With Rashi never changed my life. Right? It's just incredible. I always marvel. Can you imagine being Rashi and learning Gemara? Can you imagine being Rashi and learning Gemara, right? Which means, obviously, you're learning without Rashi. I mean, you're learning with Rashi. You're learning with Rashi, right? But like, no Rashi, right? No art scroll, no Steinsaltz, no Koren, no nothing. Like, just the sheer genius to be able to take a piece of text like this and analyze it and understand it. I mean, I don't know. It's the sheer genius of it is absolutely mind-blowing. Incredible. Okay, Vatanya, we learned. So this is the support. The Gemara says, Vatanya, Daman ha'tu'unin, he sold tu'unin kibos. Yeah, I know wait, and he made wine, right? For sure, not Moscato. For sure, not Moscato. No, it's fine. The Gemara says, Vatanya, Daman ha'tu'unin, he sold tu'unin kibos. The Gemara says like this. The Gemara says that blood that requires kibos, which means any blood that has to be poured out by the base of the mizbeach, if it gets on the clothing of the Kohen, ultimately requires laundering. Umachshava mo'elas b'hem, and ultimately again machshava. Now also this is very interesting. If halacha l'maaseh, when pouring out the blood, you had in mind to eat the carbon outside of the permitted time, that has the ability to invalidate the carbon, which is pretty wild. And ultimately, again, one who offers it up outside the base of Mikdash is going to be liable. If you notice over here, so this is the first category of Shirayim. This category of Shirayim is Damim HaTu'unin Yisod, which is blood that is poured out by the base of the Mizbeach. There was a drain by the base of the Mizbeach, so that's first category of blood. So this blood, obviously, Shirayim is clearly treated like sacrificial blood. Therefore, if there's splashback, there is a requirement of kibbutz. If you have a pigul intention, or I should say an erroneous intention, it renders it invalid. We're not going to use the word pigul, but rather puzzle. And ultimately, if you offer it up outside of the that you are chayiv. What about blood that is poured out? Amal literally means a channel. They will say, now, what does this mean? So remember, there was a channel of water that ran through the base of the crush. So again, this also this is there's so much midrashic literature about this channel and what it's going to become during the Moshe Mashiach. So there's a channel of water that runs through the base of the crush. So you will say, so again, what about blood that's poured out into this channel that runs through the base of the crush? Now Rashi points out over here what blood is poured out into the channel. Rashi says, the interesting enough, apparently, what blood was poured into the channel? Blood that became invalidated through a variety of different things, right? So invalidated. So again, carbonic blood was poured out by the base of the mizbeach. Invalidated blood was emptied into the channel that washed it into Nachal Kidron Valley. Okay, so that blood ain't only behind kibbutz. If that blood splashes back, there's no din of kibbutz. And an erroneous mindset will not invalidate the carbon. And one who goes ahead and offers it up outside of the base of Mikdash, ultimately again will be potter. Okay, incredible. So Gemara says, we'll say now, remember, we're focused not on the second category, we're focused on the first category, right? We're focused on blood that is poured out by the soul, that is poured out by the base of the mizbeach. That's what we're focusing on. And now we'll say, what does the Brisa say? The Brisa says explicitly that if there's splashback from leftover blood is being poured out by the base, what's the halacha? There's a din of kibbutz. Ultimately, again, there is a din ultimately of laundry. As it says in the Gemara, ultimately, again, who is the one who says that if you go ahead and you offer, that if you take shirayim and you offer up shirayim outside of the base of mikdash, that you are chayiv, that and ultimately, Rabbi Nechemia is the opinion who says that if you offer up leftover sacrificial blood outside of the base of mikdash, you're alive. And that same, whoever the author of this is, also holds that what? That splashback from shirayim requires kibbutz. So therefore, what do you see from here? Rabbi Nechemia. And therefore, Rabbi Nechemia is the opinion that holds that halacha l'maisa, if there is splashback from leftover sacrificial blood from shirayim, ultimately again there is a din kibbutz. There is a law of laundry, halacha of laundry. It's incredible. Now, one side, machshav ma'alis man, and one side now, perhaps the most dramatic statement in all of this was this idea that if you have an erroneous mindset when pouring out the leftover blood, that can invalidate the carbon. Remember again, both say, when are you pouring out shirayim? When is that happening? What have you done already? All of this week, right? Not just one, right? You've done all of this week. So, like, the sacrificial service is over. So the notion that an invalidating thought by shvicha, by pouring out the shirayim, should invalidate the carbon. It's pretty wild. That is pretty wild. Machshav, is that true? V'atayim we learn yotzu shirayim v'akara semurin shein ma'akvines hakapara shein machshava mo'eles b'hem. He said that's what? That ultimately shirayim, right, pouring out leftover blood, hakara semurin, the burning of the sacrificial limbs, where these items are not necessary for kapara. Right? In other words, we go ahead and we effect atonement ultimately again without these items. Therefore, because they are not necessary for atonement, ultimately again an erroneous mindset does not invalidate the carbon. So this contradicts the Brisa, because the Brisa said that if you have an erroneous mindset during the pouring out of the shine, that it can validate the carbon. What's going on over here? So which Brisa says, hold on. No. What was that referring to? When it said shirayim, that if you have an erroneous mindset during shirayim, it can invalidate the carbon. Which shirayim was it talking about? It was talking about the last 3 blood applications of Krakos. It was just calling it shirayim. Why was it calling it shirayim? Because the first blood application, is the necessary one to create effectiveness of the carbon. Therefore, the remaining 3 are called shirayim. Oh, okay. Now, what the Gemara is saying is, halacha l'maisa. If a person goes ahead and has an erroneous mindset during and pouring of the final 3, ultimately, again, it can invalidate the carbon. That makes a lot more sense. If that's the case, Tu'unin is sold, the Karen Osli. So if that's the case, and then why does it say that the blood is poured out by the Yisod, by the base? It's not poured out on the Mizbeach. The blood applications of the Chadas are done by the horns of the Mizbeach. To which the Gemara says, Ema nit anin Yisod. Ultimately, again, what it means is they will ultimately require being poured out by the Yisod. Okay, fascinating. Now, one second, let's go back. So now, what you're telling me is that halacha l'maisa, if one has an erroneous mindset by the remaining three, we'll call the last three sprinklings of the chatos, that can invalidate the carbon. Is that true? Is that statement true? Because we learned the difference. Hashas v'ha'amrit lo sharinan v'lo metagla v'lo ayli legavon. It's so fun. Remember, I say in the listing that we had on Lamed Chesed days about the ways that the last three are like the first, and the ways that the last three are separate and distinct. One of the ways in which the last three are separate and distinct is that they can't make the carbon invalid. That if you have an erroneous mindset by the last three sprinklings, the halacha mindset that doesn't invalidate the carbon. So what are you talking about? Ella, you're right. The other one is the Brisa referring to. The Brisa is referring to blood that was offered up on the inside of the Beis Hamikdash. If you look at Rashi for just a moment, Rashi is a little bit above us. Like if you go to the right, about 8 lines up in Rashi, listen to this. So this is very interesting. What the Gemara is going to suggest over here is as follows. That, remember, we've already spoken about this, we're going to speak about it more today. There are two different types of chatos offering. There's a chatos offering, there's many different types of chatos offering, but categorically there's what's called the chatos achitzon, an outer chatos, and a chatos pnimi, inner chatos. Now the real fundamental distinction between them is where the blood applications are done, right? Chatos achitzon, outer chatos, the blood applications are done on the large exterior of the mizbeach. The chatos pnimi, ultimately blood applications are done inside of the heichal, inside the actual building of the Beis Hamikdash. So the Gemara wants to make a suggestion. One of the ways in which these two categories are different is when it comes to shirayim. The shirayim of a chatas achitzon, which is what we've been dealing with up until now, really don't have an impact on the carbon. Obviously, you're supposed to pour that out by the base of the mizbeach, but if you mess it up, you don't do it, you do it, you have an erroneous mindset, it doesn't impact the carbon. However, shirayim of a chatas achitzon, shirayim of inner chatas, ultimately again are required for kapas. That's the most suggesting. We haven't seen that in the Gemara, but that's what the Gemara is floating over here. Therefore, when the Brisa said before that if you have an erroneous mindset during the pouring out of shirayim, that is referring to an inner chatas. But again, if you have an invalidating mindset by external blood or by blood of an external chatas, what's the halacha? Pater. Ultimately, your pater doesn't do anything. If that's the case, if that's the case, then in the Brisa, remember again, I will say the Brisa had two categories. It had a category of blood poured out by the Yisod of the Mizbeach, and what was category number 2? Blood poured into the channel. The Gemara says instead, why don't you leave out that second category? So instead, go ahead and focus on the first category. When is this so? When is what so? When is it so that if you have an erroneous mindset, by shirayim, ultimately invalidates the carbon, that's b'dam ha'pnimiyin. That's blood of an inner chatos. However, b'dam ha'chisonim pater, the blood of an outer chatos, ultimately again an erroneous mindset, it won't do anything. To which the just fundamentally divide that case, and those are all cases of chatos blood that is poured out by the soul of the mizbeach. To which the Gemara says, right, money that we look at me, so the Amr Shiyari Adam Shepivan Machutz Chayiv. Ultimately, again, the Nechemia holds that leftover blood that was offered up outside of the Beis Hamikdash, ultimately again, is Chayiv. Below Masnilei, plus Sapturi, Levahadra, plus Sechidive. And ultimately, again, when it comes ultimately again to these cases, he did not go ahead and quote, when it comes to Shiyari Dem Shachatos quotes, he did not go ahead and list corresponding 3 cases of Ptur, he did not list 3 cases of liability corresponding to 3 cases of Ptur. Okay, Ravina Amar, Mina Karen Manish, Mina Yisod, Mina Royal Yisod. So as the Rabbi comes along, and Rabbi reframes the conversation a little bit, And Ravina says like this. Look, Rashi says over Ravina Amar, Haja Parachta El Kamek Mene Yesod with the Ein Ta'on Kibus, Hamil Arayv Yesod. So Ravina says, when we speak about what type of blood requires kibus laundering, Ravina says literally again, Ravina Amar Mina Karen Mamish Mina Yesod. I'm sorry. Mina Karen Mamish Mina Yesod Mina Arayv Yesod. When it says ultimately again, Mina Karen, that literally means blood from the horn of the Mizbeach. When it says Mina Yesod from the base, it means any blood that is fit to be poured on the base. What that means is if any of this type of blood splatters on the clothing of the Kohen, it requires kibus. Why do you have to say it's literally blood from the horn? Why not just say ultimately refers to blood that is fit? Blood that is fit to be sprinkled on the corner of the Mizbeach, blood that is fit to be poured on the base. To which the Gemara says, Gemara says, Hi, Mai. Gemara says, Hi, Mai. So we'll say, so ultimately again, if you say it has to be blood that is fit, ultimately again for the Karen, and obviously if the blood is not fit to be part of the Yesod, we even have a havlina that it would generate an obligation ultimately for kibus. Ella mina Karen manish min hayisod min arayis. So therefore, Rabina says, I believe that the right way to interpret this is it is blood literally from the corner which splashes back. That's the blood that requires kibus, and ultimately again blood that halach l'maisa again was fit to be poured on the base. That is blood that requires kibus as well. Incredible. So we'll say so halach l'maisa. So it ends up over here. So first of all, which is fascinating to see is there is this din, ultimately again, that if blood, sacrificial blood splatters on the clothing of the Kohen, ultimately is obligated to launder. What's the machlokes? The machlokes is what qualifies as that type of blood. Is it any blood used in any parts of the blood applications, even the pouring out of the remnants or not? So that's clearly our machlokes. Also, Rabbi say another machlokes, which is quite fascinating, is what is the status of shirayim? What is the status of leftover sacrificial blood? And Nehemiah clearly holds that leftover sacrificial blood still has the status of sacrificial blood. Everyone else ultimately again seems to be arguing on that. Incredible. Let's go a little bit back there. So much to say about shirayim also. If we have a couple of minutes at the end, I'll mention it. So let's say, so the pasuk says, the asal kasher asal parachatos kenya salo. So we'll say just context over here. This is talking about har ha'alam davar minat sibar, which means again, remember we spent feels like almost all of Harius on this. This is where the Sanhedrin makes an erroneous ruling, and the Kalisol acts upon this ruling. So there is a specific part, specific katas that is blood. That's this context. Va'asa kasha asa ma ba milmot. So ultimately, again, what is it coming to teach us? It's coming to tell us ultimately again the need to go out and do hazos. It teaches us ultimately again that by this point, I want to point out something interesting. The power ultimately again of the power of Halam Government Atzibur, ultimately again halacha l'maisa is a chatas hakimi. It's chatas offered up inside of the base of the Mikdash. Remember again, as we saw before, and already as we've seen, clearly although it's also called the chatas, it is treated differently. So in one case again, you're obligated to do all of the azos. We'll discuss what that means. And ultimately, if you miss any of the blood applications, the carbon itself is invalid. Any elamatan sheva. So ultimately, so ultimately, I don't know about the seven blood application. Now, what's the seven blood application? So we'll say, this goes back to yesterday's daf, the matzlet, right? The matzlet. This is talking about when the Kohen does like that little flick of his hand in the direction of the cover and of the curtain of the Kodesh HaKadosh. Right? That's where it starts high, keeps going lower, not as much premeditated spacing, but starts high, just keeps going lower. So I understand ultimately again that you need all seven there. What about again Matan Dalim Minayin? How do I know about the four blood applications? Rabbi says, "Shein matan arba, shein makos b'chata sakita v'damin olael, v'shem makos b'kabanos apnimi." Rabbi say, interestingly enough, even if chatas pnimi is still going to have blood applications outside as well. So how do I know that halacha l'maisa by chatas pnimi? Ultimately, again, the blood applications for the outside are going to be ma'akim. So this is one of the ways in which the chatas hachitzon and chatas hapnimi are different. In outer chatas, we've just spent a significant amount of time establishing that what? That halacha, so really what you need is the first one, and the rest, you should have it, but if you don't, your covering is good. That's chatas hachitzon. By chatas hapnimi, you must have all of the blood applications, inside and outside. Inside and outside. So the Gemara says, so matan dalar minayin. So we'll say now. What the Gemara saying is like this: it goes without saying that of course you're going to require the seven interior blood applications. Why? Because those are unique to chatas hapnimi. Of course you're going to need it. I want to know that even the 4 blood applications, which are not unique to chatas hapnimi, right? The chatas hapnimi has it also, but by chatas hapnimi, all you need is the first. It's not the remaining 3. You're okay, but yet by chatas hapnimi, you must have all of them. The pasuk says, so it shall be done. This is how it has to be done. Lipar, what does that mean? We're just going to break about the pasuk. What do you mean lipar? Zepar Yom Kippur. This refers to the power of Yom Kippur, right? So also, so ultimately again, and it's equating the power of Yom Kippur to the power of Yom Kippur. Amud Beis. All right, we got this, right? Kasher Asa Lipar, right? This same as you did for the power. What does that refer to? Zepar Kohen Mashiach. This refers to, so again, remember what's power Kohen Mashiach? This is if the Kohen Gadol issues an erroneous ruling. So you see what's happening over here? What the Gemara is doing is it's darshan, and it's equating all of these other kavanos with the par helam davar minat tzibor. So what seems to be happening over here is the par helam davar minat tzibor is like the paradigmatic example of chatos pnimi, of inner mizbeach. And then what the pasuk is doing is it's slowly linking all of these other kavanos with par helam davar minat tzibor. So we're adding over here the par of Yom Kippur, like par of davar minat tzibor. Next, we're adding par kohen Mashiach, like par of davar minat tzibor. Hachatos, what does chatos include? Elu si'iri avodos kochavim. Let's get ready for this. Elu si'iri avodos kochavim. This refers ultimately again to the sin offerings for avodah zarah. This is communal avodah zarah. Right? If there's communal avodah zarah, ultimately again gives an inner chatos that's blocked. Yochol shani marda af si'iri haradolin. Right, and by the way, not on first day of Rosh Chodesh, which is technically last day of Tishrei, first day of Rosh Chodesh. So I just want to show you just very quickly. You understand just like the kissing of Moshe Haskell? We're just talking about Shirayim, the leftovers, right? One of my favorite vartak from the Baal Shem Tov HaKadosh. We say every day in Yishtabach, Haboker b'shirei zimra. Haboker b'shirei zimra. So again, what does it mean? Hashem loves the songs, right? The songs of his children. The Baal Shem Tov says shiri can also be vocalized differently as shiyarei, leftovers. Man doesn't like leftovers all that long. Hashem loves leftovers. What does that mean? That when we have a spiritual experience, ultimately, Kadosh Baruch Hu says, take it with you. Take the leftovers. Don't let the inspiration add. Don't let it go away. Just whatever, harness it, hold it, bottle it, and take it with you. Habocher b'shiyos, and Hashem loves shirayim. And I will say how incredible it is that on Rosh Chodesh Cheshvan, which is a month that is bereft of an organized Yom Tov. Do you know what happens when you have a month that is bereft of an organized Yom Tov? You make every day. If there's no organized Yom Tov, make every day a Yom Tov. Bring the leftovers, ultimately again, of Chodesh Tishrei with us into Rosh Chodesh. You can do this. V'haraya, I'm giving you Rosh Chodesh. I'm giving you what are the chances? Of Zvachim running behind the rest of Klal on that Yomi, right? And at least we get to that line ultimately again about Rosh Chodesh on Cheshvan. I both say, we often say, right? We say Mar Cheshvan. There's the whole discussion why it's called Mar Cheshvan. Is that the name of the month? Mar Cheshvan, Barach Shivan. Things they say, but that most people believe on Mar Cheshvan. All you need to do is change around the order of the letters, and Mar becomes Ram. Ram means the highest of the high. So it's a choice. It could be Mar Cheshvan, or if you're willing to take the leftovers, ultimately again of Tishrei with us, it becomes Ram Cheshvan. It can become Kodesh Kadashim. Sometimes when you don't have a split Yom Tov, you have the power to make every day Yom Tov. One more line, then we're going to stop. The Gemara says, I might have thought that we should also include in this list, ultimately again, the goats, right? The sin offerings of Rosh Chodesh of the Regalim. Amud Lomar, Lo. But the pasuk says Lo. What does Lo mean? Lo means no, only these aforementioned karbanos are included in this category, but not the sin offerings of the Regalim and Rosh Hashanah. So we'll stop over here for today. We're doing great. It's shortcut in the head. Let's say we'll catch up tomorrow. Next Hashem. Shkach everyone. A good focus. We should all be zoching next Hashem to a Ram Cheshbon. Progressive Cowley Insurance Company affiliates compares the rates on all future situations, prices, and based on how you buy. Progressive Insurance Company affiliates compares the rates on all future situations, prices, and based on how you buy. He starts to like Dan at the end there. Oh, well, that was great. That was fun, dude. How'd you like today's episode? Amazing, great clips. No suggestions. Yeah, if you guys can, please subscribe to my YouTube channel. I'm doing some streaming over there on YouTube. Sub to this channel. Have a good week. Bye. Welcome back to Tim Miss the Shop. As always, join the Patreon, join the Discord, Reddit, all that stuff. On the Patreon, we recently reviewed Adam Sandler's special, pretty good. Netflix, it was good stuff. We didn't do a review last week because we did a live stream of the political debate. Which is available on our YouTube Live. We go live Wednesday nights at around 8 p.m. Pacific Seattle time, dude. Yeah, but, that's not why they're here. No, but I got a show on Thursday in Oceanside at the Jazzy Wishbone, Chilla Chaldean. Great place, never been, never heard of him. Great guy. Oceanside, California. Check that out in California. But, like I was saying, yes. Now why they're here. What are they here to do? They're all here to watch Tim Miss the Shop, right? Right. So start the timer. Play the jam clip. All right, well, we got a lot of clips to play. It's all disorganized this week because it's so much chaos with the truck giveaway. Oh, yeah. According to Bob, it went down perfectly fine. And guess what, dude? What? I got inside information and he's 100% right about that. Yeah. I wonder which narrative is more painted, right? You always have to ask yourself that question. Is it Chang's or is it Chop? I mean, that's the age-old debate. What came first? The Shop or the TFK, you know what I mean? Right, the chicken or the turkey? Yeah, the crab legs or the ocean, dude, you know what I mean? The chicken or the chicken fingers? But let's get into it, dude. We got some 20-inch stuff coming up. Check out this post from Trevor Morver. Wake up, babe. New Elephant Graveyard just dropped. And I already messaged the man himself. I said, you know what, dude? You got a solid trilogy that just happened. The 3 videos about David Lucas. Netflix. Yeah. I mean, Elephant Graveyard's got a big dick on him. But I beg, and I fucking plead to the universe to make it a quadrilogy, dude. I want to have a 4th video about it. A quadrilogy. Yeah. I like that. Yeah, no, I mean, I can't get enough. All the David Lucas content is great. Yeah. I mean, the video is epic. Go check it out. It's too long to watch here. He also has a little bit of skits and bits at the beginning about Joe Rogan possibly killing one of his employees. Have you seen it yet? No. The fuck? What kind of planet do you live on, dude? This was posted by Chill Smith. It might get kadoosh because of the music stuff in it. It's called Meet the Shops. Check it out. Of course. Dear Brandon, I know you're sick of the pretending, but you really couldn't help yourself from the beginning. Just shoot me, please don't sue me. I'll express my own opinions. And these stories that you come up with, they never fucking need to take the pain away. Won't take a gang of us as plain as day. I really thought that you would take the pain and fade away.
because you would have seen it already. What happened in 2015, dude?
Man, so he gave a spoiled Star Wars fur, and then he said he didn't, or it doesn't matter because you should have known already.
Yeah.
I mean, that sounds like something you could do.
Yeah, you can't just be busy and balls deep in Star Wars. You have to be balls deep in Star Wars and watch it as it comes out all the time.
No accountability, dude.
But your time is expired. Shit, what a spoiler warning. Cause there ain't no way you're stopping me. Not the green poppy bee. I'm bringing all the white dads out for a photo poppy scene. Like game is clear. You ain't all the sharp point. With the tip of the spear. Like a bullet to the president. You just a nick in the ear. I'll take a shot while you're sipping the spear. Drive fast on gas, let me stick it in gear. Meet the shops. Dear Bob, I heard you flipped in a truck. The wheels you went into really fast on it. Having a fuck. Should've left your ass stuck. I felt with no help and no seatbelt. Like fucking man, I guess he just shit out of love. Here's what the facts is. Always acting so redacted. You sold your soul to Rogan. Look at all the good that did. You never read the comments, but you're always on your Instagram. You ran a foot race and tore both your quads. Like it's man. Like this fun. I think you got some things to figure out. It worked for him, why don't you take a different route? Try changing up your views, but that's way too many views to count. He said some foul shit and Papa Rogan had to rinse your mouth. Wow, you habitual line stepper. That may sound a bit softer, but of course it's a spine pepper. Always lying, now you're stepping into my sector. It's time that I got here's all the reason I don't
Sometimes, like, these shop clips make an argument that AI is actually good. Like that one, because most of the time when I see AI stuff, I'm not really a big fan.
Yeah.
But him looking all fat and funny, that's pretty good.
Oh, yeah. I'm always here for fat and funny, dude.
gonna practice the shit that you preach. Not on fashion week, you're killing me. They get TNT, pussy is my trailer shit. No one
Oh my god. Too busted out.
Cause you lied about the NFL. You lied about your comedy. I'm exposing all your lies. You idolize, and ain't no stopping me. You lied about the ACT. You lied about your comic books. You really yourself to stand up, but this isn't how a comic looks. You lied about your loyalty. You lied about just everything. How many times you think this man has gone and hit his wedding ring? You can beat my ass, you cheating ass, but you couldn't even ask for a weekend pass. You grounded like your feet on grass. Spend some time off the beaten path. I could spend a week in class trying to teach your ass, but you never learn to read the facts. You said your side piece, I see creeping past. I smell gasoline and it's leaking fast. I think it's time to leave the past. So let's meet up at the Starbucks, let's lock it in. You can call your girl and tell your family to box me in. Forget about this safety in a world that's full of crazies. Forget about your babies in the backseat of the Mercedes. The back and get some shady shit that man gon' have your baby, yo. You gotta check all that anger you got inside you. Be glad that it didn't all come to an end in that drive-thru. You are creeping up behind you.
Meet the shops. That's so white.
Attention, how the hell you let me call you that? That's not your name, dog. Respect yourself, don't fall for that. Rashad called, man, but he never should have called him back. But it's too late for that. I'm breaking out the almanac. Look, you're 45 and still ain't figured out the internet. That's why these fucking guys have always got you in a sweat. I know the pay is low, you're keeping it so frugal. If you get a job in IT, if you ever learn how to go around, tell me something, how come you can't keep a girl, son? It's just a question, I'm just keeping it real, son. We're back to Texas, go ahead and get you a real gun. I bet he dumps the bodies spaced out in a steel drum. Damn right, you must be sick of all the lying. That's why you flipped a crowder, and that's what you get for trying. Wake almost always crying about your boy D'Elia. But as soon as he was down, it was sign or see. See, I knew you weren't expecting me, so I tried to say this respectfully, but you assaulted multiple women sexually. What is it that you stand for? You never said next to me, but it seems the fighter in the can is just the recipe. So don't be testing me. The subway that got the best of them. You shake that ass Mexican like I'm yourself, Puig and all the rest of them. Go ahead and post another thirst trap. You've been over the pictures, just like she got her man. I guess the only thing you care about is your wealth. You fine with being a trophy wife alone on the shelf. They say that BBLs ain't all that good for your health. So next time your husband's out, I'll come to
guys are out here that we love keeping it us. I mean, he really nailed the cadence, right? And he put a lot of effort into coming up with all those lyrics for everything. He went over pretty much everything.
Yeah.
Everything.
Yeah, I mean,
All facets covered.
great job. You know what I mean? Could have been longer if you ask me.
Right. While I was playing, I was thinking about like driving around in my car listening to it. And I just become that guy. Like if I could download this and the funny French Cliff song by Zegner and Crack Amigo, yeah, or just like you, if I roll down my window, it's like, hey, you're listening to Meet the Shops.
Yeah.
It could be me.
How would Brendan respond?
To
Or Lil Browns or somebody?
oh, you mean like a clap back, like the rap? Oh, that would be amazing. Lil Browns, I mean, you're getting called out, dude. You gotta come up with a song, Brendan, dude. Yeah, where you at? I don't hear you.
It's not even a request. It's like kind of a demand at this point.
I mean, if they stand on business,
Yeah.
if they're trying to scoop up their bag, they gotta do it.
Okay, so let's get into this truck giveaway. This was posted by OKG7332. It's the winner of the truck giveaway owns a truck customizing business in Colorado. What are the odds? So this is the phone call Brendan gave. 888 Will Stombaugh. Right, this is his page, and this is his custom Willys fabrication business. This is his custom Willys fabrication business page. It is sketchy to me because let's look at this number right here, 270.
Yeah.
270 followers, dude. You know what I mean? Business is failing, right? 68 posts, 270 followers. That's a problem, right?
Interesting.
So keep talking.
Okay, while you're looking. So, let's see, how does he do this? He has an intern or schnoz or somebody look up random truck businesses that might not have a lot of followers and reach out to them to see if they want to be the ones secretly selected to help me out. How you come with me, I'll show you my favorite shoe. You get a truck, and then we can make a guy. And it's the best because it's their drive fast all get it. So my hat says truck on it.
He still says
It's not too tight anymore. It's not, I always forget. That's my fault. That's the team's fault, actually.
So do you want to guess how many followers he has now?
1,000.
279.
Oh, fuck, dude. It only got 9, dude. Where are we at? Cats, follow this guy.
Come on, dude. And he started following one person since this post. But maybe the shop bump was 200. He only had 70 followers. The shop bump was 200.
That's the best thing. Hands down, the best thing ever happened to Custom Willys.
Custom Willys. We should get the Custom Willys sticker, dude.
Oh, fuck yeah. That's a good idea.
Let's do it. Alright, so this was very funny. Do you know Tim Heidecker at all?
Yeah.
What is he known for? Tim and Eric's?
Yeah.
Okay, that's the only way I know Tim Heidecker, but this is a great video, dude. Posted by Mountain Dew 52. It's called Tim Heidecker's take on Tony Hinchcliffe. You ready for this?
Let's go with the beans on it.
It's like the landscape has changed so much. This Tony, you're a big Tony Hinchcliffe fan? No, I don't know. People talk about this guy. I don't even know who the fuck this is. He's a goat. So you see the kids Tony Hinchcliffe? There's the fucking goat. Better than with his insult comedy. It's fun. You're not. It's crazy. Sarcasm. Tony Hinchcliffe. See how ruined you get. I would rather try to do that. I don't know who this guy is. Every time we go on tour, somebody will be like, comedian kill Tony. You've never seen Tony. You should find a dumb clip of him. I would love to watch him. He's like a Rogan, hamster. Yeah, I guess. I'm just saying, he talks like this, but he's not gay. He doesn't know this, but he's like,
Hey, that's our bit. Hey, Tim, wait, watch it. Be cool. That's what we say. That's if everyone does this. I'm going to spell the beans on you, Tim. You watch yourself, Tim. This is my first and only warning to you. So.
well, I don't like your blue balls. I like your blue balls because you don't fuck. Because you can't make your own cop. Who's he saying? Like other people, friends. They don't have comedians. And this guy's got 50 million fans. Oh, he's a great. It's like, remember when the band Kiss was popular?
And you're like, why are they so popular? So bad. They're making bad music. They look like fools. They're no makeup on. But they've got arenas full of dodos. Like cars love it.
Well, you gotta aim for the 12-year-old boy from Kids. Sorry, guys. We've all been there.
Well, I was in the Kiss when I was like 7. And then you kind of wise up. Yeah, hear real music.
Pretty good. Yeah, dude. Funny stuff. Great guy. Never met him. Might have. Yeah. Hell yeah. I like this public conditioning of anyone involved. Yeah, I like watching. I'll be honest. I like watching Tony Hinchcliffe get made fun of by almost anybody. Oh yeah. It bothers me a little bit that one guy pretends to not know who Tony Hinchcliffe is. Yeah, I don't think he doesn't know who he is. Yeah, I gotta just call that out. I mean, he's on Rogan every other week. You know, I mean, he's a hungry wolf. You can't just ignore a hungry wolf. I think if you're really on, you can't just you can't give a hungry wolf a chance. Really, that's what he's not. He's not giving a hungry wolf a chance. But if you're on tour all the time and people ask you, well, what is Kill Tony? You're not ever looking it up to find out. I find that to be a painted narrative, my friend. Yeah, both things can't be true, dude. This one's supposed to be, oh my gosh, Sancho Villa, 88. It's Dicey. It's a post from Shop's wife. It's marriage is just a nice word for adopting a fully grown man who can't take care of himself. Chill out, Joe, being goddamn, dude. Good dude. Yeah. Wow, I hope my, significant other never says something like that about me online. And then also, sorry, not sorry, just to top it off at the end there. Sorry, not sorry is like the quintessential dumb person, like when you're saying it without being, ironic. Yeah. If you say unironically sorry, not sorry, you're pretty dumb. So, yeah, I like this post, sorry, not sorry, dude. Alright, so this one's posted by Inspector Crib. It's called My Face When I Win the Truck Walk Truck. This is the face of a young man who has driven all fast, no gas his whole life. Think boy till the end, wait for my prize, like. Who is this? You know who it is, don't you? Is it? Because that was my first thought, but it does not look like her. It is, dude. Come on. Pre or post, big gulp. Alright, I wonder if she drinks big gulps too. Dude, you're in a Shaw household? It's a problem. You don't got a big gulp. They all have their own big gulp. Yeah, that's awesome. That's actually kind of honestly. I want to do that. Family get one of their own big gulp. This is what I look like without my favorite shoe, dude. If I don't have my favorite shoe, I'm just like lost in life, you know? I mean, honestly, I think I look bad. So, like, if my face looked like this, I'd probably, I'd be a woman. So, never mind. Life would be great. That would be so much funnier. Anything else? No. Okay, so this was posted by Dazzling Rapid 633. It's called Truck Winner Used to Race at Mid 400 to kind of like the CEO of DFAG in Tristan. So I guess somebody was able to follow his account. What a crazy week, 160 miles of racing at the mid 400. So they met at the mid 400 and they thought of the scheme there. I mean, that's your painted narrative, you know what I mean? Well, I'm not saying that's what happened, but this is what that's suggesting, right? Wow, yeah. What do you think? What is your over-under on that being the truth? Honestly, it's probably like 50-50 at this point. Yeah, but I mean, this is the biggest intrigue that mid 400 has ever had, probably, right? Oh, yeah, for sure. Yeah. What else has happened at that thing besides this? They saw multiple hundreds of percentage uptick when Shop showed him moving. Right. I mean, I'm going next year. Mm-hmm. I'm driving. Yeah, dude, we're gonna use your Corolla. Yeah, it's a race to mid 400. This one's posted by Booth of Fett. It's called The Diddler Makes an Appearance on Rare Insults subreddit. Oh, yeah, I saw this one. He looks like the crow if he died of liver disease instead of being. Look at that. That's just, I mean, that chest piece is, it's hilarious that he has multiple hawks on his body. There's one here, one there. There's probably another hawk on his body. Right? Probably. He's just trying to, he's trying to get in, but we can go on in a minute, I don't think. Yeah, what came first, his tattoos or our show, right? Yeah, definitely our show. Yeah. But, he's a tweetie. This one's posted by El Gallo. It's called Defect Truck Contest Winner Announced. And this is the guy, William. Does he ring a bell? I mean, here's the thing. The low effort put into this is what wins me over. Because sometimes that's what one of my James posts that gets me like, I love how little effort was put into this, but it actually makes it funny. That's this post. Yeah. Very good. All you need to make a good post is a good premise. This, my friend, is a good premise.
Yeah, great spicy dish, dude. Next one is, okay, now we're in some video clips here. Now this is where I'm talking about disorganization. I didn't organize things to be chronological or anything, so we're just gonna, soak it all in.
Yeah.
Pause.
You know what? You can just say,
We're picking clips this week, and it's this one's posted by Busy Middle 8108. It's called "The Audacity to Ridicule Another Comedian's Ticket Sales, Let Alone His Best Friends, is Truly Remarkable." That's good. Same.
Talk to Sunday in Dallas. When the Dallas Cowboys played, even though you guys showed up and played on it, I really appreciate it.
On Sunday.
Sunday was not so late. It was that's about pretty cool.
I got videos from fans. If that's true, then how do we not get videos, dude?
Yeah, and he got videos from fans, like they were sending him just a shot to say, hey, look, Callan sucks, or were they just like, hey, I'm at Callan's show, I'm so happy to be here, and Sean's like, not many people do.
I forgot there's an asterisk to post a ghost. It's post a ghost asterisk, and when you go to the bottom of the page, it says, unless people are sending you videos of your friends' shows, and there's nobody there. I like your impression of Sean getting a DM from a fan.
I'm making fun of him on their show now. I counted 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 7, 9, 10, too many after that.
Nobody, yeah.
I see three-quarters.
When he thinks he has a joke, it's the worst.
Yeah.
I mean, it's funny for us, but it's always the same. He's doing like that with his face. Like, what happened? Like, hey, boy, that bad. It's like, who's laughing at that?
Yeah.
Not me.
People that fuck my name up are laughing at that. Quacks, dude. That's for sure.
Actually, I'm laughing at it, so.
You fuck my name all the time.
No, that and this. I realize I'm just lying, and I am laughing literally at this.
Now, Friday,
Maybe not, actually.
I don't know why it's so quiet this week, but I kind of like it that way too.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, what do you think? Who's telling the truth here? 3/4 full or less than 3/4?
Well, it's surprising that anyone would go to a Brian Callen show at all, but he is a famous person, and if I'm like, who lies more, it's definitely Shaw, so I think Brian Callen probably had 3/4 full.
It makes sense though too, because this is the same show. It's like you don't want to go in person. Audio's king.
Sure.
Yeah. Maybe if there's some sort of audio companion piece you could listen to outside the doors, maybe that's what was happening.
Why milk the cow when you can get the meat for free?
Yeah. Yeah, why pick the udders when you can poke the eyeballs? You know what I mean? What? That's what it's these say, right? Shoot for the stars and land on my face, dude.
Okay. Or lodge, but
let's see here. This one's called, or posted by I Downvote King Days. It's called Brian asks Papa if he was in Colorado last weekend for the truck stuff. Dicey. I haven't seen this one.
Yeah, neither.
well, I was in Denver. You were for the truck stuff. No, for the championship. That's right. How'd that go? See family? Oh, yeah. Papa, Nubby.
What if Nubby is just like his childhood friend that had a nub and he's like, your name Nubby?
Could be. That sounds like what it is. Yeah, 100%.
What about Tarek?
I don't know. They haven't talked about Tarek in a long time. Yeah, don't worry about my guy.
Yeah. I wonder if Tarek is pregnant still.
Maybe he's in Denver, dude.
Tarek on the truck.
Stacks. There's that kind of stuff. Trying to get the night. Come on.
Trying to stack my nub.
I don't know what that means. I don't know what stack human being. What does that mean?
Yeah. Stack my nub is kind of pause-worthy, dude.
That shirt is what are we doing here? I think it's the worst. That's the worst defect shirt I've seen.
The camel shirt?
Yeah, it's horrible. It says like DFG here. Like, what would you? It's very childish. Here, that I think. Who's buying that?
Have they used the acronym yet, or is that just a pure Chang's acronym?
But I haven't said DAFG, but I think that shirt said DFG.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Damn, I closed the window already, but I'll look into it later. Do your own research, just like our politics.
Yeah, don't just get the vaccine.
Yeah. Okay, so this is the actual truck winning video, I believe. Confidence search 8648. Truck winner is from Colorado. You know what? This is the post, but let me go ahead and talk to the audience real quick, and I'm going to pull up his Instagram.
Okay, and that clip that where he does the winner, he has on the famous yellow hat. We were saying before that we thought maybe Joanna's making the clothes, and that's why he's so weird. Yeah, maybe it's just like he's a good husband. That could be a huge stretch, though. You never know.
Yeah.
If I won the truck, which I guess I officially had now not won the truck,
I feel bad for you, bro.
I would fucking, I don't know. Part of me is like, well, you know what? I don't think I would sell it. I think I would use it for the show. We would do bits in the truck. Maybe have some sort of weird promo thing at the beginning of 10 minutes to shop in a truck.
I agree. I wish we could shoot a Timos in the truck. That would be amazing. Maybe we could hit a wheelie.
Me winning the truck, though, that means the shop has accepted us, bro.
Yeah.
Because I didn't, like, you know, call me.
Well, I'll offer at least. All right, so let's check.